There is a coffee shop. You probably know the kind. The air smells of roasted beans and warm milk. The chairs are minimalist and slightly uncomfortable, and the low hum of quiet ambition fills the space. A person sits at a small table. Let's call them Alex. On the surface, there is a picture of success. A clean laptop, an expensive watch, the gentle clinking of a ceramic cup. But beneath the table, a foot taps an anxious rhythm against the floor. A phone, placed face down, vibrates silently, sending ripples of urgency across the polished wood. Another email, another notification, another demand on a mental checklist that never seems to get any shorter. Alex takes a sip of coffee, but doesn't taste it. The mind is elsewhere, caught in a whirlwind of future obligations and past mistakes. A ghost living in a machine of flesh and bone, a machine that is supposed to be enjoying this moment of peace. This feeling, this quiet desperation in a room full of comfort, is the signature of our modern age. We have been taught the art of acquisition, the skill of adding more. We add more tasks to our calendars, more information to our brains, more items to our homes, more goals to our horizons. We climb ladders, seeking a better view, only to find that the air is thin and the summit is just a brief resting place before we are shown another, higher peak. In this relentless pursuit of more, we have forgotten the art of being. Our minds have become like overflowing attics, cluttered with dusty anxieties, broken resolutions, and the noise of a world that never sleeps. We are adrift in a sea of our own thoughts, and we have forgotten that we were ever meant to stand on solid ground. But what if there was another way? A path that does not involve adding, but subtracting. Not an escape from life, but a deeper engagement with it. A way to quiet the storm, not by fighting the waves, but by finding the stillness deep beneath them. This is not a new idea, not a modern life hack or a productivity trick. It is an ancient wisdom, a science of the mind that has been practiced and refined for over 2,500 years. It is the wisdom of Buddhism, offered not as a system of belief to be adopted, but as a set of practical tools to be used, a mirror to look at our own minds, and a path to lead us back to the home we have forgotten, the quiet, spacious, and peaceful center that has always existed within us, waiting patiently behind the clouds of our thinking. To begin this journey, we must first turn our attention inward, to the space between our ears. It is a space that is rarely, if ever, truly silent. There is a voice in there, isn't there? A constant narrator, a tireless commentator on everything we see, do, and feel. It plans, it rehearses, it remembers, it regrets. It judges the person walking past us on the street. It criticizes our own reflection in the mirror. It worries about a meeting scheduled for next week, and it replays an awkward conversation from a decade ago. It is never still. In the traditions of the East, this endless, restless internal chatter is given a wonderfully accurate name: the monkey mind. The image is immediate and powerful. Imagine a monkey in a great tree, agitated, frantic, never staying on one branch for more than a second. It leaps from a branch of memory to a branch of future planning, to a branch of self-criticism, to a branch of idle fantasy, swinging wildly, ceaselessly, without purpose. This is the state of the untrained human mind. And the first and most compassionate thing we must understand is that this is not a personal failure. You are not broken because your mind is noisy. This restlessness is the default condition of a mind that has not yet been shown another way to be. It is the starting point for us all. This mental agitation is not a modern malfunction, but an ancient survival mechanism. For countless millennia, the human brain evolved to ensure our survival in a world filled with real, physical threats. A mind that constantly scanned the environment, that worried about where the next meal would come from, that rehearsed how to escape a predator, was a mind that kept its human host alive. This threat detection and problem-solving software was an evolutionary superpower. The mind's job was to never rest, because rest could mean death. It created stories, projected possibilities, and learned from past pains to construct a safer future. We are the descendants of the most successful warriors. The problem is that this ancient, life-saving software is still running, but the world it operates in has transformed. The saber-toothed tigers and warring tribes have been replaced by deadlines, social pressures, overflowing inboxes, and the 24-hour news cycle. The threats are no longer acute and physical, but chronic and psychological. Yet, the mind's alarm system rings with the same primal urgency for a critical email as it once did for a lurking predator. It is a system in perpetual overdrive, a magnificent tool designed for a different age, now creating the very anxiety it was meant to protect us from. And modern life, far from calming this ancient mechanism, has become its ultimate amplifier. We live in a culture of distraction, an economy that mines our attention for profit. Our digital devices are engineered to be irresistible. Each notification, each buzz, each red bubble is a carefully crafted stimulus that hijacks our monkey mind and gives it another branch to swing from. The endless scroll of a social media feed is a bottomless well of comparison, opinion, and outrage, feeding our mind a constant diet of agitation. We have lost the gift of empty time, those precious moments of boredom that once allowed the mind to settle. Waiting for a bus, standing in a line, the quiet moments before sleep are now instantly filled with a podcast, an article, a video. We are conditioning ourselves to be intolerant of stillness. We are teaching our monkey mind that it must always be entertained, always be fed new information, always be swinging. On top of this digital deluge, we have built a culture of relentless productivity. We are told to optimize, to hustle, to be constantly improving. Our own minds are turned into projects to be managed, efficiency charts to be maximized. The result is not a calmer mind, but a more exhausted one. It is a mind that has not only forgotten how to be still, but has come to fear stillness. For in the quiet, we might have to face what we have been running from. The natural, intuitive response to this inner chaos is to try and stop it. We tell ourselves, I need to clear my mind, or just stop thinking about it. We try to wrestle the monkey into submission, to force the thoughts to go away. This is perhaps the most important and tragic misunderstanding in our relationship with our own minds. The attempt to suppress a thought is the very thing that gives it strength. There is a famous psychological experiment. You can try it right now. For the next 30 seconds, do whatever you want, but do not, under any circumstances, think about a white bear. Do not picture its white fur, its black nose, or its paws in the snow. Just don't think about it. What happened? Most likely, your mind was immediately flooded with images of white bears. This is called the ironic process, or the white bear problem. When you command the mind not to do something, it must first call that very thing to mind in order to know what it is supposed to be. Avoiding, by fighting a thought, you place it on a pedestal. You shine a spotlight on it. You engage it in a battle, a tug of war. But you are pulling on a rope made of smoke. The struggle itself is the trap. The thought, I must not be anxious, is a recipe for anxiety, because you are constantly scanning yourself for signs of it, thereby creating the very feeling you wish to avoid. We are prisoners not of the thoughts themselves, but of the struggle against them. This human predicament is captured perfectly in an old Buddhist parable. A man is walking through a field when he is suddenly chased by a ferocious tiger. He runs as fast as he can to the edge of a cliff. Seeing no other escape, he grabs hold of a thick vine and begins to lower himself over the side. As he hangs there, suspended between the snarling tiger above and a deep, rocky chasm below, he looks down and sees, to his horror, another tiger at the bottom, waiting for him to fall. His life hangs by this single vine. Then he notices something else. Two small mice, one white and one black, have appeared from a crevice and are beginning to gnaw on the very vine he is clinging to. The white mouse of the day and the black mouse of the night are slowly, steadily eating away his only hope of survival. At that moment, in this state of absolute peril, he sees a single, wild strawberry growing from the cliff face, glistening with a drop of sweet honey. Forgetting the tigers, forgetting the mice, forgetting his imminent death, he leans over and with great focus licks the drop of honey. It is delicious. We are that man, the tiger of the past, filled with our regrets and traumas, chases us. The tiger of the future, with its uncertainties and fears, waits for us below. The vine is our fragile life, and the two mice, day and night, are relentlessly gnawing away at our time. We are suspended in this precarious, existential condition. And what does our monkey mind do? It fixates on the honey. The drop of honey is that fleeting thought, that momentary distraction, that worry about what to eat for dinner, that fantasy about a promotion, that replaying of a trivial argument. In the face of life's profound and terrifying beauty, we distract ourselves with the sweet, sticky, and ultimately insignificant honey of our compulsive thinking. We become so absorbed in the taste of these fleeting mental moments that we forget we are hanging over an abyss. This is the tragicomedy of the unquiet mind. It is a prison we build for ourselves, one distracting thought at a time. This is not a purely philosophical problem. The link between this chaotic inner world and our emotional suffering is direct and undeniable. A thought, in itself, is just a flicker of energy in the brain. It is weightless, ephemeral, but when we grasp it, when we believe it, when we identify with it, it becomes the seed of an emotion. A thought arises: my presentation tomorrow will be a failure. This thought is not a fact. It is a mental event. But if we water it with our attention, the body begins to react as if it were a reality. The stomach tightens, the heart rate quickens, the palms become clammy. The emotion of anxiety is born. The thought was the spark. The emotion is the fire that consumes us. Notice that the event itself, the presentation, hasn't even happened. The suffering is created entirely in the present moment, by the mind's story about the future. The traffic jam is not the source of your anger. The traffic jam is just stationary cars. The thought, this is ruining my day, that driver is an idiot, I am trapped, is the source of the anger. We are not reacting to reality, we are reacting to our interpretation of reality. We are held captive, not by the world, but by the relentless, unexamined commentary of our own minds. We have now seen the chaos. We have identified the restless monkey and the prison it builds around us. We have seen how our attempts to fight it only strengthen its bars, and how the honey of our thoughts distracts us from the very nature of our existence. We see the prison clearly, but to find a way out, we must understand how it was built. A structure this strong, this persistent, must have foundations. The monkey mind does not leap about in a vacuum. It is fueled by something. So, Our next question must be, where does this frantic energy come from? What are the deepest roots of this incessant, self-disturbing activity? Our journey now takes us a level deeper, from the symptoms of the chaos to its fundamental cause. If the unquiet mind is a prison, we have now arrived at the warden's office. We are seeking the source of the chaos, the fuel for the frantic monkey. The wisdom of the Buddhist tradition suggests that this energy is not random. It follows predictable patterns, driven by forces as fundamental to our psyche as gravity is to the physical world. These forces are known as the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots. This language might sound harsh, but it is not a moral judgment. It is a psychological diagnosis. These are not sins to be punished, but deep-seated habits of the mind that cause suffering. Much like a poison, when ingested, inevitably causes sickness. They are called lobha, dosa, and moha, and in our modern language, we can understand them as craving, aversion, and ignorance. These three forces are the puppet masters, and our thoughts, emotions, and anxieties are the strings they pull. To find freedom, we must first learn to see them at work within us. The first poison is craving, or greed. This is the mind's relentless pulling motion, the constant feeling of I want. It is the fundamental lean of the heart toward pleasure. This is not just the obvious desire for wealth, fame, or power. It is far more subtle, woven into the very fabric of our moment-to-moment experience. It is the craving for a pleasant taste to last longer on the tongue. It is the craving for a word of praise, for the feeling of being right in an argument, for the validation of a like on a social media post. It is the deep yearning for security, for love, for a life free from discomfort. It's the voice that whispers, if only I had that, then I would be happy. The object of the craving changes, but the underlying energy of wanting, of needing, of grasping remains constant. The fundamental problem with craving is that it is a hunger that cannot be satisfied. Its nature is to be insatiable. This is the tragic feedback loop of desire. When we finally get what we want, the pleasure it provides is fleeting. The new car soon becomes just a car. The thrill of the promotion fades into the daily grind of the new job. The beautiful sunset ends. And once the pleasure subsides, the mind, conditioned by craving, immediately begins to search for the next source of pleasure, the next thing to acquire, the next experience to consume. It is, as the texts say, like drinking salt water to quench a thirst. The more we drink, the thirstier we become. This is the primary engine of the monkey mind, the force that keeps it swinging, forever chasing the next ripe fruit on the next branch, never finding a place to rest. The second poison is aversion or hatred. It is the equal and opposite force to craving. It is the mind's violent pushing motion, the visceral feeling of I don't want. It is the heart's rejection of all that it finds unpleasant. Like craving, this goes far beyond the obvious. It is not just hatred for an enemy or rage at an injustice. It is the subtle flicker of annoyance at the person chewing too loudly next to us. It is the irritation at the traffic jam that makes us late. It is the deep-seated resistance to our own feelings of sadness, fear, or loneliness. It is the harsh inner critic that despises our perceived flaws. Any time the mind rears up and screams, no, at reality as it is, that is aversion. The poison of aversion works by creating a state of internal warfare. When we push against a reality we cannot change, we create immense tension. The world does not bend to our will. By hating the rain, we don't stop the storm. We only succeed in making ourselves miserable and wet. By resisting our own anxiety, we don't make it disappear. We pour fuel on its fire, making it stronger and more terrifying. Aversion is the futile and exhausting act of fighting with life itself. A Zen master once said that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. This pushing, rejecting, and fighting gives the monkey mind its most violent and agitated energy. It keeps it busy, not just swinging, but attacking the branches it doesn't like, shaking the whole tree in a futile rage. The first two poisons, craving and aversion, are the two wings that keep the monkey mind in frantic flight. But neither could operate without the third and most fundamental poison, ignorance or delusion. This is the deepest root of our suffering. Ignorance, in this context, does not mean a lack of education or worldly knowledge. You can have a PhD and still be steeped in this kind of ignorance. It refers to a fundamental misperception of reality, a blindness to the way things truly are. It is a form of deep-seated confusion about the nature of ourselves and the world we inhabit. What are we ignorant of? We are ignorant of the pervasive truth of impermanence, believing deep down that pleasant things can be made to last and unpleasant things can be banished forever. We are ignorant of the nature of the self, believing in a solid, separate, unchanging me at the center of our experience, a fragile ego that needs constant defending and promoting. It is this core ignorance that gives rise to the other two poisons. Because we are ignorant of impermanence, we desperately try to cling to fleeting pleasures, giving rise to craving. Because we mistakenly believe that painful experiences are a permanent threat to our solid self, we desperately try to push them away, giving rise to aversion. Ignorance is the darkened room in which we mistake a rope for a snake. Craving is our desire to possess the beautiful rope, and aversion is our terror at the snake. The problem is not the rope itself, but our inability to see it clearly for what it is. This fundamental confusion is the dark, fertile soil in which all our anxieties, our desires, and our conflicts grow. A simple story illustrates how these three poisons conspire to create our suffering. There was once a farmer whose most prized possession was his strong, healthy cow. It gave his family milk and helped him plow his fields. One morning, he awoke to find the cow's enclosure empty. The cow was gone. Immediately, the first poison, craving, arose. His mind was filled with an intense wanting. He needed his cow back. He thought of the lost profits, the difficulty of his work, the disruption to his life. A painful feeling of lack and desire consumed him. His peace was shattered by this powerful pull of I want. After searching the immediate area with no success, the second poison, aversion, began to stir. His mind, needing a target for its frustration, remembered a recent disagreement with his neighbor. A story began to form, a narrative of blame. My neighbor must have stolen it. He was always jealous of my cow. The farmer's anxiety now curdled into anger. He felt a hot surge of resentment and ill will. He imagined confronting his neighbor. The angry words he would shout. He was no longer just a man who had lost a cow. He was a victim, filled with the burning, pushing energy of hatred. He was holding the hot coal, filled with this self-righteous fury. He began stomping toward his neighbor's property, rehearsing his accusations. But as he passed the edge of the nearby forest, he noticed something on the ground, fresh tracks, leading into the trees. He followed them for a few hundred feet, and there, standing peacefully under a large banyan tree, was his cow, contentedly chewing its cud. It had simply untied its rope and wandered off to find better grass. In that moment, the farmer saw it all. His intense craving, his burning anger, his entire internal drama had been a complete fabrication. It was all built on a foundation of not knowing the truth. It was all rooted in the third poison, ignorance. He didn't know where the cow was. So his mind, fueled by the deep-seated habits of craving and aversion, invented a story. That story was the source of his suffering, not the simple, undramatic reality of a wandering cow. This is the cycle that plays out in our own minds, countless times a day. We react to the events of our lives not as they are, but through the distorted lens of these three poisons. The restless energy of our monkey mind is not some random, meaningless noise. It is the direct result of the pull of craving, the push of aversion, and the fundamental blindness of ignorance. These forces work together in a vicious, self-perpetuating loop. Our ignorance causes us to crave things we believe will make us happy. When we fail to get them, or when we lose them, we feel aversion. This drama of wanting and not wanting reinforces our mistaken belief that our happiness depends on external conditions, which only deepens our ignorance. This is the very engine of our discontent, the hamster wheel that the monkey mind runs on day after day. We have now dug beneath the prison of our thoughts and exposed its foundations. We have diagnosed the illness and identified the poisons that are sickening our hearts and minds. And a clear diagnosis, however grim it may seem, is the first and most necessary step toward finding a cure. If our suffering is caused by these poisons, then the path to freedom must lie in finding their antidote. If craving, aversion, and ignorance are the path into darkness, then what path can possibly lead us out of this feverish dream and into the clear, cool light of peace? We have walked through the dark soil where our suffering grows, and we have identified the three poisons that nourish its roots: craving, aversion, and ignorance. To know the cause of an illness is the first step, but it is not the cure. To simply be aware that we are poisoned is not enough. We need the antidote. The ancient wisdom of the Buddha offers one, not in the form of a dogma to believe, a ritual to perform, or a deity to worship, but in the form of a very direct and practical skill. It is a way of using the mind to heal the mind. This antidote, this path to freedom, is called mindfulness. The word itself has become a modern buzzword, found on magazine covers and in corporate wellness programs, and it is often stripped of its profound depth. So let us explore what it truly means. In the original Pali language, the word is sati, which carries the meaning of remembering, of bearing in mind. It is the practice of remembering to pay attention to our present moment experience. The most widely used modern definition, wonderfully simple and precise, comes from the teacher John Kabat-Zinn. Mindfulness is paying attention, in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Each part of that definition is a key that unlocks a door. Perhaps the most crucial key is understanding what mindfulness is not. It is not an attempt to stop thinking or to empty the mind. This is the first great hurdle where so many people stumble. They sit down, close their eyes, and are immediately confronted by the wild chaos of their own monkey mind. Thoughts about work, family, memories, and fantasies storm through their awareness, and they conclude, "I can't do this. I am a failure at meditation. My mind is too busy." This conclusion is based on a fundamental misunderstanding. The goal of mindfulness is not to stop the traffic of your thoughts. The goal is to stop standing in the middle of the road. Your mind is a thought-producing organ, just as your heart is a blood-pumping organ. You would not try to stop your heart from beating. The practice is not to fight the thoughts, but to change your relationship to them. Imagine your thoughts are like clouds floating across the vast, open sky of your awareness. Before mindfulness, we are identified with each cloud. A dark cloud of sadness appears, and we say, "I am sad." A stormy cloud of anger comes, and we say, "I am angry." We become the cloud. Mindfulness is the practice of realizing that you are not the cloud. You are the sky. You are the spacious awareness in which all clouds dark and light, big and small, arise and pass away. The sky does not cling to the beautiful, fluffy clouds, nor does it try to push away the dark, stormy ones. It allows them all to be, to come, and to go, without being disturbed by them. This shift from being the cloud to being the sky is the beginning of liberation. Let's use another metaphor, that of a great river. The stream of our consciousness, with its swirling thoughts and emotions, is like a powerful river. For most of our lives, we are thrown into this river. A thought of worry grabs us, and we are swept away in its current, tumbled through its rapids, pulled under by its undertow. When we are lost in thought, we don't even know we are in the river. We have no perspective. We are simply carried along from one reactive emotion to the next, completely at the mercy of the current. Mindfulness is the radical act of learning to swim to the riverbank. It is the conscious choice to step out of the tumultuous flow and to sit on the shore, simply watching the river go by. From this stable vantage point of awareness, we can see the nature of the river with incredible clarity. We can observe the powerful currents of craving, the jagged rocks of aversion, the murky waters of confusion. We see old logs of memory drift past, and the light of happy thoughts sparkling on the surface. We see it all, but we are no longer being swept away. We are grounded. We are safe. We are free to simply observe the nature of our own mind without being its victim. This riverbank is always available to us, and its name is the present moment. But how do we find this riverbank when the current is so strong? We need an anchor. We need something to hold on to that can ground us firmly in the present moment. Something that can pull our attention out of the chaotic river of thought. The most powerful and accessible anchor we have is our own breath. The practice of mindfulness of breath, or anapanasati, is the cornerstone of this path for a reason. Your breath has several unique qualities. It is always with you, from the moment of your birth to the moment of your death. It is utterly free and requires no special equipment. Most importantly, your breath is always happening in the present moment. You cannot take a breath that is in the past, nor can you take one that is in the future. To be aware of the physical sensation of your breath, the feeling of the air entering your nostrils, the rising and falling of your chest and abdominis, by definition, to be present. The mind is like a wild kite, buffeted by the winds of thought and emotion. The breath is the string that you hold in your hand, connecting you to the kite, allowing you to feel its pull without letting it fly away. The practice is simple. When you notice that your mind has been carried away by the wind, which it will, again and again you don't get angry at the kite or frustrated with the wind. You simply, gently, and with great kindness, guide your attention back to the feeling of the string in your hand. You return to the breath. That act of returning over and over is the practice itself. It is the bicep curl for the muscle of attention. This is not an abstract, esoteric practice reserved for monks in caves. It is a way of living that can be integrated into any moment of our lives. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh told a story about a student who asked him how to practice. The master spoke about washing the dishes. He explained that while you are washing the dishes, you should be completely present with the act of washing the dishes. This means you are not rushing through them to get to the better part of your evening, like drinking a cup of tea. You are not mentally replaying an argument from earlier in the day. You are simply there. You feel the warmth of the water on your hands. You see the iridescent bubbles of the soap. You hear the sound of the plate being scrubbed clean. You are aware of your posture, your breathing. In that moment, the mundane chore of washing dishes is transformed into a profound meditation, an act of living fully. The simple dish becomes the entire universe. The lesson is revolutionary. There are no mundane moments. Life is not a dress rehearsal for some future event. This, right now, is it. This breath, this step, this act of washing a dish. Mindfulness teaches us that any moment we are fully alive to is a sacred moment. The benefits of this practice are not delayed until some far-off state of enlightenment. They begin to manifest almost immediately, in tangible ways. On a physiological level, mindfulness is a direct antidote to stress. When we are lost in anxious thoughts, our body enters a state of fight or flight, activating the sympathetic nervous system. Our heart rate and blood pressure rise. By consciously bringing our attention to the slow, rhythmic nature of the breath, we activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's rest and digest mode. This sends a signal of safety and calm throughout our entire being. Mentally, the practice builds our capacity for focus. In an age of distraction that is rewiring our brains for scattered attention, mindfulness is a powerful form of resistance, training us to place our attention where we want it, for as long as we want it there. But perhaps the most life-altering benefit is the creation of what is sometimes called the sacred pause. It is the space that opens up between a stimulus and your response. For example, someone cuts you off in traffic. The stimulus. Before mindfulness, the response is often instantaneous. A surge of anger, a shouted curse, a blast of the horn. There is no space, no choice. With practice, a space appears. The stimulus happens. You notice the thought, "That idiot cut me off." You notice the feeling of anger rising in your chest like a hot flush. And in that moment of noticing, a pause is born. In that pause, you have freedom. You have a choice. You can still choose to get angry, but it is now a choice, not an unconscious reaction. Or you can choose to breathe, to let it go, to recognize that the other driver is probably just as lost in their own river of thought as you used to be. This sacred pause is the difference between being a slave to your impulses and being the master of your own mind. We have now explored the what and the why. We understand that mindfulness is the potent antidote to the poisons of craving, aversion, and ignorance. We see that it is not about achieving an empty mind, but about cultivating a wise and compassionate relationship with our own experience. We have the image of sitting on the riverbank, watching the waters of our mind flow by, and we know that the breath is the anchor that can hold us there. We have the map, and we have a theoretical understanding of the boat that can carry us to the other shore of peace and freedom. But a map is not the same as the journey. Knowing the principles of sailing will not, by itself, get you across the ocean. The time for theory is over. The next, and most vital, step is to learn how to step into the boat, pick up the oars, and begin to row for ourselves. So, how do we begin this practice in a real, tangible way? Let us now take that first and most fundamental step together by turning our full, gentle attention to the simple, profound, and life-giving miracle of the breath. We have arrived at the very heart of the practice. The theory has been laid out, the path has been illuminated, and now we must take the first step. This step is not a grand leap, but a simple, gentle turning of our attention inward. We have spoken of the breath as an anchor, a boat, a tool to bring us home to the present moment. Now, let us learn how to use it. This is not a test. There is no goal to achieve. no special state to reach, and no right or wrong way to feel. The only intention is to be present with ourselves, with kindness, and with curiosity. This practice, called anapanasati, or mindfulness of breathing, is the foundation upon which the entire palace of peace is built. It is a coming home to the body, a resting in the quiet truth of this very moment. So, find a place where you can sit for a few minutes without being disturbed. It does not need to be a special cushion on the floor, though it can be. A simple, straight-backed chair works perfectly. Sit in a way that embodies a sense of dignity. Allow your spine to be upright, but not stiff, as if a gentle string were pulling the crown of your head toward the sky. Let your shoulders relax. Your hands rest comfortably in your lap, and your feet rest flat on the floor. You can allow your eyes to gently close, or if you prefer, you can leave them slightly open, with a soft, unfocused gaze directed toward the floor a few feet in front of you. This is a posture of wakefulness, of being present for your own life. Now, begin by bringing your attention into your body. Feel the weight of your body on the chair. Feel the points of contact, the gentle pressure where your skin meets the surface that supports you. Notice the sensation of your feet on the ground, a feeling of being connected to the earth. For a moment, just rest in the simple, physical reality of being here, in this body, in this room. You are not trying to change anything, simply noticing what is already true. From this grounded place, gently guide your awareness to the physical sensations of your own breathing. There is no need to breathe in a special way, no need to force a deep breath or change your natural rhythm. The breath is already happening, all by itself. Your only task is to feel it. You might notice the sensation most clearly at the tip of the nostrils, feeling the cool air as it enters your body and the slightly warmer air as it leaves. Or you might be more aware of the gentle rise and fall of your chest. Or perhaps you feel it most deeply in your abdomen, a subtle expansion with every in-breath and a gentle softening with every out-breath. Choose one of these spots as your home base, your primary point of focus. Rest your attention there, as gently as a butterfly rests on a flower. Feel the beginning of one in-breath, its middle, and its end. Feel the natural pause that follows. Then feel the beginning of the out-breath, its middle, and its end. This is all you need to do. It will not be long before you notice something else. The mind will wander. This is not a mistake. It is not a sign that you are failing. It is simply what minds do. It is in their nature to think, to plan, to remember, to worry. So, after a few breaths, you may suddenly find yourself lost in a train of thought. You might be rehearsing a conversation, planning your next meal, or remembering something from your childhood. You might be miles away and minutes into the future or the past. The moment you realize this has happened, that your attention is no longer on the breath, that is the golden moment of the practice. That is a moment of pure mindfulness. In that moment of realizing, you have woken up from the dream of thought. The practice here is a simple, three-step process to be repeated with infinite patience. First, gently acknowledge where your mind has gone. You can say a soft mental note, like thinking or worrying or planning. There is no judgment in this, just a simple recognition. Second, gently let go of the storyline. You don't need to follow it to its conclusion, nor do you need to aggressively push it away. Just release your grip on it. And third, with great kindness, lovingly guide your attention back to your anchor, back to the physical sensation of the breath. Feel the very next in-breath and the very next out-breath. You have returned. The mind will wander 1,000 times, and your job is simply to return 1,001 times with the same gentle patience you would use with a small puppy you are training. This act of returning, without anger or frustration, is the practice. This is the bicep curl for the brain that builds the muscle of concentration and compassion. There is a beautiful old story that illustrates the spirit of this practice. It is the story of a person taming a wild buffalo. The wild buffalo represents our untamed mind, full of powerful, chaotic energy. It wants to run wherever it pleases, charging through the fields of fantasy and getting stuck in the mud of negative emotions. The person taming the buffalo is our mindful awareness, our patient intention to find peace, and the rope the person holds is the breath. The tamer does not try to subdue the buffalo with violence by beating it or shouting at it. This would only make the buffalo more fearful and more aggressive. Instead, the tamer holds the rope with a gentle but firm hand. When the buffalo wanders off the path, the tamer gives a gentle, persistent tug on the rope, not to yank the buffalo, but to remind it of the path, to guide it back. When the buffalo charges, the tamer gives it some slack, but never lets go of the rope. This process is repeated again and again, with unwavering gentleness. Over time, the great wild buffalo begins to learn and to trust. It realizes the tamer is not a threat, but a guide. Eventually, it walks calmly beside the tamer, no longer needing the rope, its powerful energy now harnessed and directed, at peace. Our practice with our own mind should be like this. We hold the rope of the breath with a gentle hand. We guide, we don't force. We are kind, not cruel. We are patient, knowing that taming such a powerful force takes time. This practice is not merely a psychological exercise. It has profound physiological effects. Our bodies have an autonomic nervous system, which operates largely unconsciously. It has two main branches. The sympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight response. When we are stressed, anxious, or lost in worried thoughts, this system is activated. It floods our body with hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, preparing us for a perceived threat. Our heart races, our muscles tense, our breathing becomes shallow. The parasympathetic nervous system is our rest and digest response. It is the state of calm, healing, and restoration. When we consciously and gently place our attention on the breath, particularly when we allow the exhalation to be slow and relaxed, we are directly stimulating a major nerve called the vagus nerve. This nerve is the primary controller of the parasympathetic system. By focusing on the breath, we are sending a powerful, direct signal from the body to the brain that says, "All is well. You are safe. You can stand down from high alert." It is a biological reset button. It lowers the heart rate, reduces blood pressure, and allows the mind to settle. This isn't magic. It is the science of how our bodies are wired for both stress and calm. The breath is the key that allows us to consciously choose which system we want to activate. Finally, it is essential to understand that this practice is not confined to the 20 minutes you might spend on a cushion in the morning. That formal practice is the training ground, the gymnasium where we strengthen our attention. The real event is our life. We can learn to bring this mindful awareness of the breath into the most ordinary activities. When you walk from your car to your office, instead of being lost in thought, you can feel the sensation of your feet making contact with the ground and notice the rhythm of your breath as you move. When you drink a cup of tea, you can take a moment to be a buffalo tamer. Instead of multitasking, simply be there with the tea. Feel the warmth of the mug, see the steam rising, smell the aroma, and be fully present for that first sip. You can use external cues as bells of mindfulness. When the phone rings or a red light stops your car, let that be a signal to stop, come back to your body, and take one conscious breath. In doing this, your entire life starts to become the practice. The division between formal meditation and daily life begins to dissolve. Every moment becomes an opportunity to come home. We have now learned how to begin. We have our instructions, our posture of dignity, and our anchor in the breath. We understand that the practice is not about perfection, but about patient and kind returning, like the buffalo tamer with his rope. We know that this simple act has the power to transform our inner world, both psychologically and physiologically. This practice of anchoring ourselves in the breath is the essential training. It is how we build a stable platform, a sturdy boat that can withstand the inevitable storms of the mind. And now, with this newfound stability, with this anchor firmly in place, we are ready for the next stage of our journey. We are no longer terrified of the waves, because we are no longer in danger of drowning. With the anchor of the breath holding us steady, we can now dare to look more closely at the waves themselves. We can begin to observe the very nature of the thoughts and feelings that pass through our awareness, not to get lost in them, but to finally understand them. With our anchor of the breath firmly in hand, we have found a place of relative stability on the riverbank of the present moment. We have learned to hold steady, even as the powerful currents of the mind flow past. Now, our practice evolves. It is time to turn our attention from the anchor to the river itself. We are now going to look directly at our thoughts. The purpose here is not to analyze their content, to debate their validity, or to follow them down their rabbit holes. The purpose is simply to see them clearly, to recognize them for what they are: transient, impersonal, and insubstantial events that arise and pass away within the vast space of our consciousness. This is the great turning point in the practice. The shift from being a character lost in the drama of our own mind to becoming the calm, curious audience watching the play unfold. The most powerful metaphor for this practice is that of the sky and the clouds. Imagine that your true nature, the core of your being, your fundamental awareness, is the sky. This sky is vast, open, boundless, and luminous. It is inherently peaceful and has never been harmed. It is always there, whether you can see it or not. The thoughts, feelings, moods, and sensations that move through you are like the clouds. The clouds are not the sky. They pass through the sky. Some days, the sky is filled with dark, heavy, stormy clouds of anger or despair. On other days, it is home to light, wispy, beautiful clouds of joy and happiness. Sometimes the clouds are grey and monotonous, like boredom. Other times, they move with incredible speed and violence, like anxiety. But no matter what the weather is like, no matter how thick or dark the clouds are, they never stain or damage the sky itself. The sky contains the weather, but it is not defined by it. Sooner or later, the clouds always pass, revealing the same clear, open sky that was there all along. The great mistake of our lives is that we forget we are the sky and we believe we are the clouds. When a dark cloud of sadness appears, we contract around it and say, "I am sad." We forget the vast, peaceful sky that surrounds that cloud. The practice of observing our thoughts is the practice of remembering, I am the sky. A thought, a feeling, a cloud of sadness is simply passing through me. This creates a profound sense of space and freedom. To cultivate this perspective of the sky, we can employ a simple but powerful technique called mental noting or labeling. It is a way of gently acknowledging our thoughts without getting entangled in them. Here is how it works. As you sit, anchored to your breath, you will inevitably notice that the mind has wandered. A thought has captured your attention. Instead of either being swept away by it or aggressively shoving it aside, you can make a soft, gentle, one-word, mental note to categorize the thought. If you find yourself thinking about your to-do list, you can silently note planning. If you are worrying about a future event, you can note worrying. If a memory from the past arises, remembering. If you are daydreaming, fantasizing. If you are judging your meditation practice itself, you can note judging. The label should be soft and light, like a feather touching a balloon, not a pin popping it. The purpose is not to engage in a deep psychoanalysis of your thoughts, but simply to recognize their flavor, to see what kind of cloud has just drifted into view. The act of labeling is deceptively powerful. It does two things. First, it interrupts the automatic process of identification. When you are lost in a spiral of worry, you are the worry. The moment you are able to step back and say, this is worrying, you are no longer the worry itself. You have become the one who is aware of the worrying. A space has been created. It objectifies the thought, turning it from a subjective reality that has consumed you into an objective event that you are observing. It's the difference between being caught in a movie and realizing you are sitting in a theater watching a screen. Second, it reveals the impersonal nature of thought. As you practice noting, you begin to see that the same types of thoughts arise again and again. Planning, worrying, remembering, judging, planning. You see that the mind has its own habitual patterns, its own well-worn grooves. You realize that these thoughts are not necessarily yours in a deeply personal sense. They are more like conditioned, automatic responses that the brain generates, like pop-up ads on a computer screen. This realization is incredibly freeing. If they are not truly me, then I don't have to take them so seriously. This practice of observation leads to a crucial shift in the very language we use to describe our inner world, a shift that can change everything. We are conditioned to say things like, "I am angry," or "I am a sad person." These are statements of identity. They equate the entirety of our being with a temporary, emotional, or mental state. When you say, "I am angry," there is no space. You and the anger are one and the same, a solid, monolithic block of angry identity. Now, consider a different way of phrasing it. "I am experiencing a feeling of anger," or "I notice that thoughts of anger are present in my mind right now." Can you feel the difference? In this second phrasing, there is a subject and an object. There is an I, who is the observer, the awareness, the sky, and there is an experience, a feeling, a thought of anger, which is the object being observed, the cloud passing through. This simple change in language breaks the spell of identification. It acknowledges the impermanent, transient nature of our inner states. You are not the anger. You are the one who is aware of the anger. You are not a sad person. You are a person who is, in this moment, experiencing sadness. You are the container, not the contents. This is a profound truth that you can practice applying in your self-talk all day long, turning your relationship with your own mind from one of fusion to one of freedom. There is a classic Zen story that speaks to this process. A very learned and intelligent scholar came to visit a Zen master to inquire about the nature of Zen. The scholar was full of his own knowledge, theories, and opinions, and he spoke at length about his own understanding. The master listened patiently and then began to serve tea. He filled the scholar's cup to the brim, and then, without stopping, he continued to pour. Tea overflowed from the cup, cascading onto the saucer and then onto the table. The scholar, shocked, cried out, "Stop! The cup is full. No more will go in." The Zen master looked at him and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" Our minds are often like this overflowing cup, filled to the brim with our incessant thoughts, our rigid beliefs, our stories about ourselves and the world. We are so full of our own mental content that we have no space to receive the simple, direct reality of the present moment. The practice of observing our thoughts, of seeing them as mere contents rather than as our identity, is the process of emptying our cup. It is creating the inner space necessary for true wisdom and peace to arise. It is not about becoming ignorant or passive, but about letting go of our rigid attachment to the ceaseless chatter so that we can finally see what is real. This practice is not limited to the time you spend in formal seated meditation. You can practice being the sky and watching the clouds throughout your day. When you are in a meeting at work and you feel a wave of anxiety or irritation wash over you, can you notice it? Can you mentally label it? Anxiety is here, while still listening to the person who is speaking. This inner acknowledgement creates a buffer. It prevents the emotion from hijacking your behavior. When you're having a conversation with a loved one and a defensive thought arises, can you see it as a cloud, a conditioned reaction, rather than immediately speaking it into existence and escalating a conflict? This inner seeing allows you to choose your response wisely. Every moment of emotional charge, every interaction, every traffic jam becomes a laboratory for this practice. Life itself becomes your meditation, and you learn to navigate its challenges not by controlling the weather, but by remembering that you are the sky. We have now learned to rest as the sky-like awareness in which the clouds of thought and emotion pass. We have a technique for noting their presence, and we understand the profound freedom that comes from breaking our identification with them. We are no longer defined by the passing weather of our minds. We see thoughts for what they are: ephemeral, impersonal, and insubstantial. This is a monumental step towards inner freedom. However, as we sit on the riverbank and watch the clouds go by, we may notice that certain clouds are darker, heavier, and more persistent than others. They have a particular stickiness that hooks us more easily and causes a disproportionate amount of pain. These are the clouds of judgment. They are the voice of the inner critic, the one that tells us we are not good enough, and the voice of the outer judge, the one that constantly finds fault in others and the world. To continue on our path to a truly peaceful heart, we must now turn our mindful attention to this particularly potent source of suffering. We must learn to look directly at the nature of judgment, and in doing so, to disarm its power over us. As we continue to sit on the riverbank of awareness, watching the clouds of thought drift by, we begin to notice that some clouds are different. They are heavier, darker, and stickier than the others. They have a certain gravity that pulls us back into the turbulent water more easily. These are the clouds of judgment. Judgment is the relentless inner voice that acts as a critic, a commentator, and a scorekeeper for our entire lives. It is the voice that whispers, "You're not good enough." It is the voice that mutters, "He shouldn't have done that." It is a constant overlay of good and bad, right and wrong, should and shouldn't, that we superimpose onto the raw, unfiltered experience of reality. While other thoughts may be fleeting, the voice of judgment feels authoritative, truthful, and deeply personal. It is one of the most persistent and potent sources of our suffering, poisoning our relationship with ourselves and with everyone around us. The mechanism of judgment is both simple and insidious. It operates by holding up a fantasy, an ideal, and then cruelly measuring reality against it. The gap between the imagined ideal and the experienced reality is the space where all our dissatisfaction is born. Consider how it works with ourselves. In our mind, we hold an ideal of the person we should be: productive, confident, patient, disciplined, always kind. Then, we look at the reality of our messy, human lives. We procrastinate, we feel insecure, we lose our temper, we break our resolutions. The inner judge sees this gap and delivers its verdict. You are a failure. You are lazy. You are not trying hard enough. This constant comparison to an impossible, non-existent ideal creates a background hum of inadequacy and guilt. The same process is projected outward onto others. We hold an ideal of the perfect partner, the perfect friend, the perfect boss. When these real, flawed human beings inevitably fail to live up to our fantasy, the judge pounces. They are so inconsiderate. They let me down. They should know better. This creates a world of constant disappointment, resentment, and conflict. We suffer, not because reality is flawed, but because we are chained to a fantasy and are perpetually angry that the world refuses to conform to it. This inner judge did not appear from nowhere. It is not some evil entity that has taken up residence in our minds. It is a learned behavior, a survival strategy that has been deeply conditioned into us from our earliest days. As children, we learned very quickly that certain behaviors earned us praise, affection, and a sense of safety, while other behaviors resulted in disapproval, punishment, or the withdrawal of love. Our parents, our teachers, and our society taught us a complex set of rules for being a good person. The inner judge is simply the internalization of all those external voices. It is our attempt to police ourselves in order to ensure we remain safe, accepted, and worthy of love. At its deepest root, it is an evolutionary mechanism. For our ancestors, being rejected by the tribe was a death sentence. The part of our brain that judges and conforms is trying, in its own clumsy and often cruel way, to protect us from that ultimate fear of exile. When we can see the judging mind not as a malevolent enemy, but as a scared and misguided protector, our entire relationship to it can begin to soften. We can start to approach it, not with hatred, but with a degree of compassion for its own deluded efforts. The great Zen master Hakuin provided a timeless demonstration of what it means to live free from the tyranny of judgment. Hakuin lived in a small village, and his simple, profound teachings earned him a reputation as a deeply enlightened man. One day, the teenage daughter of a local shopkeeper was discovered to be pregnant. Her furious parents demanded to know who the father was. Terrified, the girl, named Hakuin, the parents, enraged, stormed to the temple and screamed at the master, accusing him of hypocrisy and defiling their daughter. Hakuin listened calmly to their tirade, and when they were finished, he simply replied, "Is that so?" His reputation in the village was instantly destroyed. People who once revered him now scorned him. When the baby was born, the parents brought the child and thrust it into his arms. He accepted the baby with grace and cared for it with great tenderness, finding wet nurses and everything the child needed. A year passed. The young mother, her heart tormented by guilt, could no longer bear her lie. She confessed to her parents that the real father was a young man who worked at the fish market. The parents were horrified, filled with shame for what they had done. They rushed back to Hakuin, bowing low, apologizing profusely, and explaining their mistake. They asked to have the baby back. Hakuin, without any trace of resentment or triumph, gently handed the child over to them, and all he said was, "Is that so?" Hakuin's response is a profound teaching. He was not attached to the positive judgment of being a saint, nor was he disturbed by the negative judgment of being a sinner. He lived in a place of such deep inner peace that the wild swings of the world's opinion, its praise and its blame, were like winds that could not touch him. He did not resist the false accusation, nor did he cling to the final vindication. This is the freedom of a mind that has been liberated from judgment. It is a mind that rests in reality as it is, without needing to add a secondary layer of commentary. While few of us may reach Hakuin's level of equanimity, his story points the way. It shows us that it is possible to unhook ourselves from the powerful pull of both criticism and praise, and to find a peace that is not dependent on external validation. So, how do we begin to cultivate this freedom in our own lives? We cannot fight the judge, because as we've learned, fighting a thought only gives it more power. Instead, we can use a skillful and compassionate technique. The first step, as always, is mindfulness. We must learn to recognize the voice of judgment as it arises. We can use our labeling technique and simply note, judging. The moment we recognize it, we are no longer fused with it. The second step is a radical one. Instead of condemning the judge for being so harsh, we can acknowledge its underlying protective intention. We can turn to it internally and say, "Thank you. I see that you are trying to protect me. I see that you are worried that I will fail or be rejected." This act of gratitude is completely disarming. It meets the judge's constricted, fearful energy with the open, warm energy of compassion. It is like meeting a clenched fist with an open palm. The fist has nothing to hit, and it begins to relax. The third step is to gently let it go. Having acknowledged it, we don't need to engage it in a debate. We don't need to prove it wrong. We simply withdraw our attention from it and place it back on our anchor, the breath, or on the reality of the present moment. We are not exiling the judge. We are simply choosing not to give it the fuel of our attention. Ultimately, to free ourselves from a deep-seated habit, it is not enough to just stop doing it. We must consciously cultivate its opposite. The direct opposite of judgment is not praise, which is just the other side of the same coin. The true antidote to judgment is curiosity. Judgment is a closed state of mind. It delivers a verdict and slams the door. It says, "You are wrong," and the conversation is over. Curiosity, on the other hand, is an open state of mind. It asks questions. It wants to understand. It opens a door rather than slamming one shut. We can practice this transformation in our daily thoughts. When the judgmental thought arises, "I am so lazy. I can't believe I didn't finish that project," we can notice it and then intentionally introduce a curious question. "I'm noticing a lot of resistance. I wonder why. What is this resistance trying to tell me? Am I tired? Am I afraid? Does this task feel meaningless?" The focus shifts from self-flagellation to self-understanding. The same applies to others. When the judgment, "that person is so arrogant," arises, we can replace it with the curious inquiry, "I wonder what makes them behave that way. What insecurity or fear might be driving that behavior?" This practice melts the hard, certain, and righteous edges of the judgmental mind. It moves us from a position of conflict to a position of compassion. It allows for the possibility that we don't have the full story, and it opens our hearts to a much richer and more nuanced understanding of ourselves and the world. We have now looked directly at one of the mind's most toxic habits. We have seen how the inner judge creates suffering by comparing reality to a fantasy. We have learned from the profound equanimity of Master Hakuin, and we have been given a practical key: meeting the judging mind with gratitude for its misguided attempts to protect us. And we have discovered the transformative power of replacing the closed fist of judgment with the open hand of curiosity. As we practice this, as we learn to drop the heavy gavel that we have used against ourselves and others for so long, we may notice a new quality emerging in our awareness. When we stop our exhausting and futile war with reality, when we cease demanding that it be different than it is, we create the space for something else to arise. We create the possibility of simply letting things be. This is the natural gateway to the deep and healing wisdom of acceptance. Having learned to quiet the voice of the judge, we are now ready to explore what it truly means to allow the great river of life to flow, without needing to condemn or approve of its every twist and turn, but to simply and finally let it be. Having laid down the heavy gavel of judgment, we find ourselves in a new inner landscape. The constant noise of good and bad, right and wrong, begins to fade, and in its place, a quiet space emerges. In this space, we are left with the world as it is, in its raw, unedited form. The next great step on our journey is to learn how to inhabit this space with grace, to meet reality on its own terms. This is the practice of acceptance. Now, this is perhaps one of the most misunderstood concepts in all of spiritual practice. For many of us, the word acceptance sounds like resignation, weakness, or passivity. It sounds like giving up or condoning things that are harmful or unjust. This is not at all what it means. True acceptance is not passive resignation. It is an act of profound courage, clarity, and intelligence. It is the brave and conscious choice to stop fighting a war with reality. It is the simple, yet radical, recognition that what is happening right now is, in fact, happening. It is a yes to the present moment, not necessarily because we like it, but because it is already here, and fighting with what is already here is the definition of insanity. To understand the power of acceptance, we must first grasp the crucial distinction between pain and suffering. In the Buddhist view, pain is an inevitable, unavoidable part of human life. There will be physical pain, sickness, injury, aging, and eventually, death. There will be emotional pain, the sorrow of loss, the sting of rejection, the disappointment of failure. Life will, at times, throw a dart at us. This is the first dart, and it is outside of our control. No one is exempt. Suffering, on the other hand, is the second dart. The second dart is the one we throw at ourselves. It is our mental and emotional reaction to the initial pain. It is the story we weave around the first dart. The first dart is the headache. The second dart is the thought. This headache is ruining my day. It's never going to end. I can't stand this. The first dart is the job loss. The second dart is the spiral of self-judgment. I'm a failure. I'll never find another job. My life is over. Suffering, therefore, can be expressed in a simple formula. Suffering equals pain multiplied by resistance. Pain is the constant. Resistance is the variable. Acceptance is the practice of reducing our resistance to zero. When we can meet our pain with pure, non-resistant acceptance, the suffering that accompanies it dissolves. The first dart may still hurt, but we stop stabbing ourselves with the second. This immediately raises a critical question. If I accept things as they are, does that mean I never try to change them? If I accept my illness, do I stop seeking treatment? If I accept injustice in the world, do I become a doormat? The answer is a definitive no. In fact, true acceptance is the necessary foundation for all wise, effective, and sustainable action. It is the difference between acting from a place of panicked reactivity and acting from a place of grounded clarity. Imagine your car has a flat tire. You can react with resistance, shouting, kicking the tire, cursing your bad luck. This is the energy of non-acceptance. From this state, any action you take will likely be clumsy and inefficient. Or you can begin with acceptance. You take a breath. You look at the situation clearly. Okay, the tire is flat. That is the reality of this moment. From this calm, clear-eyed acceptance, you can then act with skill and purpose. You can open the trunk, get the jack, and change the tire. Acceptance doesn't prevent action. It purifies it. It allows us to respond to life's challenges from a place of inner peace and wisdom, rather than from a place of blind, chaotic rage. We work to change the world for the better, not because we are at war with it, but because we love it, and we accept the reality of its present suffering as our starting point. A classic Zen story beautifully illustrates the suffering created by non-acceptance. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long pilgrimage. Their journey brought them to a wide river with a swift current. On the riverbank stood a young woman in fine clothes, hesitating, afraid to cross for fear of ruining her dress and being swept away. The monastic code was strict. The monks were forbidden from touching women. The junior monk stood back, thinking about the rules. The senior monk, however, sized up the situation, walked over to the woman, and without a word, lifted her onto his shoulders. He carried her carefully through the churning water and set her down gently on the other side. She thanked him, and he nodded, and the two monks continued on their way. Hours passed. The senior monk walked in his usual serene silence, but the junior monk grew more and more agitated. He was fuming. He replayed the scene over and over in his mind, his disapproval growing with every step. How could his master have so flagrantly broken the sacred precepts? It was a scandal. Finally, miles down the road, he could contain himself no longer. He burst out, "Master, I must speak. How could you do that back there? You know we are forbidden from touching a woman. Yet you picked her up and carried her." It was a serious transgression. The senior monk looked at his troubled companion with a calm, gentle gaze and replied, "Brother, I set that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story reveals our own condition perfectly. We are all carrying burdens from the past. We carry old hurts, resentments, regrets, and arguments. We are still mentally fighting battles that ended long ago. Acceptance is the act of putting the woman down. It is the recognition that the past is over, and the only place it exists now is in our own resistant thoughts. We can also apply this practice directly to the present moment, to the raw data of our own experience. Try this. The next time you feel an unpleasant physical sensation, perhaps a tension headache or a knot in your shoulder, instead of immediately tightening against it and wishing it away, try turning toward it. Bring your awareness to the precise location of the sensation. Investigate it with a gentle curiosity, as if you were a scientist discovering a new phenomenon. What is its exact texture? Is it hot or cold? Is it sharp or dull? Is it vibrating or still? Don't add a story to it. Don't label it pain. Just feel the raw sensory data. You are meeting the first dart with pure awareness, without throwing the second dart of resistance. You may be amazed to find that when it is met with this kind of open, allowing attention, the sensation often softens, lessens, or changes its quality. The same can be done with difficult emotions. When you feel a wave of anxiety, instead of running from it, can you allow it to be there? Where do you feel it in your body? As a tightness in the chest, a churning in the stomach? Can you breathe into that physical location, giving the feeling space, allowing it to exist without being consumed by its story? This is the courageous practice of accepting your inner weather, just as it is. There is an ancient story from the Middle East about a king who asked his wise men to create a ring that would make him happy when he was sad, and sad when he was happy. After much deliberation, they presented him with a simple ring. Inscribed on it were the words, "This too shall pass." This simple phrase is a powerful mantra of acceptance. When we are in the midst of pain, sorrow, or despair, to remember, "This too shall pass," is not a form of denial. It is a profound acknowledgement of the law of impermanence. It allows us to accept the difficulty of the present moment more fully, precisely because we know that it is not a permanent destination. It is a season, and seasons always change. And when we are experiencing moments of great joy, success, and happiness, the same phrase serves as a wise counsel. "This too shall pass," reminds us to savor the sweetness of the moment without clinging to it desperately. It reminds us to hold our joys with an open hand, knowing that trying to grasp them will only crush them and lead to future suffering when they inevitably change. This phrase is a distillation of deep wisdom, a constant reminder to accept both the peaks and the valleys of life with grace and equanimity. We have now explored the landscape of acceptance. We see it not as a weakness, but as a courageous and intelligent alignment with reality. We understand that it is the key to liberating ourselves from the self-inflicted suffering of the second dart, and that it provides the stable ground from which all wise action springs. We have learned from the monk who knew how to put the woman down, and we have a practice for meeting our own difficult sensations and emotions with a curious and allowing spirit. In practicing this, in learning to stop our war with the ever-flowing river of life, we naturally begin to notice something profound about the river itself. We see, in our own direct experience, that nothing ever stays the same. Every thought, every feeling, every sensation, every situation is in a constant state of flux. This direct seeing of life's transient nature is the next great portal of insight on our path. Having learned to accept reality as it is, we are now ready to look deeply into one of its most fundamental characteristics: its beautiful, relentless, and liberating impermanence. Through the gateway of acceptance, we have stepped into a clearing. We have stopped our exhausting war with the river of life and have agreed, for a moment, to simply sit on its bank and watch it flow. And as we watch, we cannot help but notice its most fundamental characteristic. It never stops moving. No two moments are ever the same. Everything is in a state of constant, ceaseless transformation. This universal truth, this law that governs all conditioned existence, is known in the Buddhist tradition as anicca, or impermanence. At first glance, this idea can seem sorrowful or even frightening. The thought that everything we love will change, that everyone we know will one day be gone, that our own bodies and minds are in a perpetual state of flux, can be unsettling. But to see impermanence as a bleak philosophy is to misunderstand it completely. In truth, the deep, experiential understanding of impermanence is one of the most profoundly liberating, hopeful, and life-affirming insights we can ever have. The liberating power of impermanence is most clearly seen when we are in pain, when we are caught in the grip of intense grief, anxiety, or despair. Our minds tend to project this state into an infinite future. It feels as though the darkness will last forever. It feels as though we will always be this broken, this lost. This feeling of permanence is a delusion, and it is a primary source of our hopelessness. The law of anicca is the antidote to this despair. It is a guarantee written into the very fabric of the cosmos that your suffering is temporary. Because everything changes, your pain must also change. Your anxiety must change. Your grief must change. It is not a permanent feature of who you are. It is a temporary weather pattern passing through the sky of your awareness. The storm cannot rage forever. The clouds must eventually part. This is not wishful thinking. It is universal law. This understanding gives us the strength to endure our most difficult moments, not with grim resignation, but with a quiet, confident hope, knowing that this too shall pass. It reminds us that we are never truly stuck, because the entire universe is in a conspiracy of constant motion. This is not a concept to be simply believed. It is a reality to be directly observed. Your meditation practice is a laboratory for investigating impermanence. The most immediate place to see it is in your own breath. Each breath is a complete cycle of life and death. An in-breath arises from nothing. It sustains for a moment, and then it dissolves back into nothing. It is followed by a pause, and then a new out-breath is born, lives its short life, and dies. With every breath you take, you are experiencing the truth of anicca. Look at the sensations in your body. An itch appears on your arm. You feel its intensity. You watch it, and it fades away. A feeling of warmth from your cup of tea spreads through your hands, and then, slowly, it dissipates. Now, turn this investigative lens onto your mind. A thought appears, seemingly from nowhere. Where was that thought before it arose? It lingers for a moment, and then it vanishes. Where does it go? An emotion, like a wave of irritation, swells up within you, crests, and then, if you don't feed it with more stories, it naturally subsides. When you see this directly, again and again, the thoughts and feelings that once seemed so solid, so serious, and so defining, begin to lose their power. You realize you are not observing solid, static things, but rather flickering, transient processes. The Buddha once illustrated this with a simple, powerful teaching. He gathered his disciples on a sandy beach and, using his finger, he drew a large, perfect circle in the sand. He turned to them and asked, "Is this circle permanent?" The disciples, of course, replied, "No, Blessed One, it is not permanent. A gust of wind, a splash from a wave, or a passing footstep will erase it." The Buddha then took his own foot and deliberately smudged a section of the circle. "Is it the same circle now?" he asked. "No, Blessed One," they replied. "It has changed." Then, he proceeded to erase the entire drawing with his foot, leaving only flat, unmarked sand. "Now," he asked, "where is the circle?" He then explained that our lives are like this circle in the sand. Our physical body, our feelings, our perceptions, our beliefs, our relationships, our possessions, all the things we identify with and cling toward temporary patterns, formations drawn in the shifting sands of time. We suffer because we treat these temporary patterns as if they were etched in stone. We build our identity and our security upon them, and then we are filled with grief and despair when the inevitable winds and waves of change come and alter or erase the patterns. Wisdom is to understand the nature of the sand. It is to appreciate the beauty of the drawing while it lasts, without forgetting its transient nature. This brings us to the heart of the relationship between impermanence and suffering. It is crucial to understand that change itself is not the problem. Anicca is just a neutral law of nature, like gravity. The suffering is not caused by impermanence. It is caused by our attachment to that which is impermanent. It is our clinging, our grasping, our desperate attempt to hold on to things that by their very nature cannot be held. It is the friction caused by our resistance to the natural flow of life. We cling to our youth, and so we suffer when we see wrinkles in the mirror. We cling to a particular stage of a relationship, and so we suffer when it naturally evolves or ends. We cling to a moment of pleasure, and so we suffer when it fades. We are like a person trying to build a dam in the middle of a powerful river with our bare hands. Our struggle is exhausting, futile, and a source of immense pain. The river is not trying to hurt us. It is just flowing as it must. The wise person does not try to stop the river. Instead, they learn to build a raft and flow with it, navigating its twists and turns with skill and grace. When we stop fighting impermanence and begin to embrace it, it reveals a profoundly beautiful side. A deep, conscious awareness of impermanence infuses our lives with a sense of preciousness and vibrancy. When you know, in your bones, that every moment is fleeting and will never come again, you are far more likely to show up for it fully. You listen more attentively to the story your child is telling you, because you know this phase of their life is temporary. You savor the taste of a meal more deeply, because you know the pleasure is transient. You look at a sunset with a sense of awe and wonder, precisely because you know its magnificent colors will soon fade into darkness. Acknowledging impermanence is the ultimate antidote to taking life for granted. It replaces our lazy assumption of someday with the sacred urgency of now. It calls us to love more fully, to forgive more easily, and to appreciate the simple miracle of being alive right now, because this present moment is the only one we will ever truly have. It is a call to awaken from the slumber of routine and to live with our hearts wide open. So we have seen that the law of Anicca is not a depressing verdict on the futility of life, but a liberating truth. It is the guarantee that our suffering is not permanent, and it is the invitation to cherish the gift of the present moment. We have seen it in the life and death of every breath. We have seen it in the fleeting nature of our thoughts, and we have understood it through the parable of the circle in the sand. We now understand that our suffering comes from trying to grasp the ungraspable, to fix that which is in constant motion. And now, this profound investigation into the nature of reality leads us to an even deeper, more personal, and perhaps more unsettling question. If everything I experience is impermanent, if my body is constantly changing, my feelings are constantly shifting, and my thoughts are flickering on and off like fireflies in the night, then what about the experiencer? What about the I that seems to be at the center of it all? If everything in my world is as ephemeral as a circle in the sand, can this sense of self, the thing I cling to more fiercely than anything else, truly be a solid, separate, and permanent entity? This question, which arises naturally from a deep contemplation of impermanence, leads us to the very edge of our conventional understanding of who we are. It brings us to the doorway of the next great insight, the wisdom of non-self. We have journeyed far into the landscape of our own minds. We have sat with the truth of acceptance, and in doing so, we have come face to face with the universal law of impermanence, Anicca. We have seen, in our own direct experience, that everything we can perceive is like a circle drawn in the sandor bodies. Our feelings, our thoughts, our worldly possessions all are in a state of constant, relentless flux. This profound insight naturally leads us to the deepest and most challenging question of all. If everything I experience is changing, what about the one who is having the experience? What about this I This sense of self that feels so solid, so central, so continuous, and so real. The thing we defend most fiercely, the headquarters from which we view the world. If all the contents of the house are ephemeral, what about the owner of the house? The Buddha's teaching on this point is the most radical, the most subtle, and ultimately, the most liberating of all. It is the wisdom of anatta, or non-self. Let us be very clear from the outset. The teaching of non-self does not mean that you do not exist. It does not mean that you are nothing, or that life is a meaningless void. You are reading these words. You are breathing. You are experiencing. The teaching of anatta is far more subtle. It suggests that you do not exist as a separate, solid, independent, and unchanging entity. The self or ego that we feel ourselves to be is not a permanent thing, but a temporary process. It is not a noun, but a verb. It is a bundle of interconnected, ever-changing patterns that, when working together, create the illusion of a fixed, central controller. It is a story we tell ourselves. A story that begins with, I am. To understand this, we can do what the Buddha suggested. We can go looking for this self. Where is it? Is it in your body? Your body is constantly changing. The cells you had 7 years ago are almost entirely gone, replaced by new ones. Your body is composed entirely of non-you elements, the food, water, and air you have taken in from the world. It gets sick, it ages, it will one day dissolve. So the body, being impermanent, cannot be a permanent self. Well, are your feelings yourself? Feelings are even more fleeting. Happiness, sadness, anger, boredom, they flow through you like the weather, changing from moment to moment. They cannot be a stable self. What about your thoughts? We have already seen that thoughts are like clouds, arising and ceasing in the mind. They are conditioned by our language, our education, our culture. They are not a consistent, independent self. What about your consciousness, your awareness itself? Consciousness, too, is dependent. There is consciousness of seeing, consciousness of hearing, consciousness of thinking. It arises in relationship to an object and disappears when the object is gone. When we investigate honestly, when we look for a permanent, unchanging CEO running the corporation of me, we cannot find one. All we find are these 5 interconnected processes, the 5 aggregates as they are called in Buddhism: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. The self is not a thing behind these processes. The self is the activity of these processes, creating a temporary, convincing, but ultimately illusory sense of a separate me. The ancient Taoist sage Zhuangzi told a story that perfectly illustrates the practical power of this wisdom. Imagine you are rowing a small boat across a misty river. It is a peaceful morning, and you are enjoying the quiet journey. Suddenly, with a loud thud, another boat collides with yours. Immediately, you feel a surge of anger. Your peace is shattered. You look up, ready to shout at the careless person who hit you. Hey, watch where you're going. But when you look, you see that the other boat is empty. It simply broke free from its moorings and was drifting with the current. In that instant, what happens to your anger? It vanishes. There is no one to be angry at. There is no one to blame. The event is no longer personal. You simply push the empty boat away and continue on your journey. Now, imagine a second scenario. The same collision happens, but this time, you look up and see a man in the other boat. Your anger flares. You shout at him. He shouts back. Your mind fills with stories about his incompetence, his rudeness. Your entire day is soured by the encounter. The external event was exactly the same in both scenarios, a collision between two boats. The only difference was that, in the second scenario, you believed there was someone in the other boat who had wronged you. The teaching of non-self reveals that all of the difficult events and people who collide with us in life are, in a fundamental sense, empty boats. The hurtful comment from a colleague, the criticism from a partner, even our own negative self-talk, they are all events that arise from a complex web of causes and conditions, drifting on the river of life. But our ego, our deeply ingrained belief in a solid, separate me, insists on populating those boats. It insists on taking everything personally. It creates a story of a perpetrator who is intentionally harming a victim. When we can see, through wisdom, that there is no solid, separate self to be attacked, the anger, resentment, and self-pity have nowhere to land. We are free to simply respond to the situation, to push the boat away skillfully, without the immense burden of personal offense. This investigation can be turned inward as a powerful form of meditation. When a wave of anxiety washes over you, you can ask, who is it that is anxious? As you look for this solid, anxious I, you will find only the vibrating energy of anxiety itself, a collection of physical sensations and racing thoughts. There is no central worrier to be found, only the impersonal process of worrying. When someone insults you and you feel the hot flush of anger, you can ask, who exactly has been insulted? Is it your body? Is it your name? Is it a belief you hold? As you deconstruct the experience, you see that the feeling of being offended is simply a conditioned defense mechanism of a phantom self. By repeatedly asking, who is this? We begin to see through the illusion. The ego is like a shadow. It seems real and solid, but when you shine the bright light of awareness on it and try to grasp it, you find there is nothing there. It is absolutely vital to understand that this wisdom does not lead to a cold, nihilistic view of life. Non-self does not mean annihilation. In fact, it means the very opposite. It is the illusion of a separate self that is a form of annihilation because it separates us from the richness of life. The wisdom of anatta reveals that you are not separate. You are deeply and profoundly interconnected with everything else in the universe. Think of a wave on the ocean. The wave has a unique identity for a time. It has a particular shape, a certain height, a specific speed. We can point to it and say, that is a beautiful wave. But is that wave in any way separate from the ocean? Number. It is made of ocean water. Its entire existence is simply the ocean performing an act of waving. It arises from the ocean, and it returns to the ocean. At no point is it anything other than ocean. We are like that wave. We have a name, a body, and a personality for a little while. But we are not, and never have been, separate from the great ocean of existence. You are made of non-you elements. The sun, the rain, the earth that grew the food you eat, the countless generations of ancestors who came before you, the culture and language that shaped your mind. The belief that you are a separate, isolated wave is the core illusion. The wisdom of non-self is the liberating realization that you are the entire ocean, expressing itself for one glorious moment as this unique and precious wave. We have now journeyed to the heart of the Buddhist understanding of reality. We have seen that the self we so desperately defend is not a solid entity, but an ever-changing process, a story woven from form, feeling, perception, thoughts, and consciousness. We have learned from the parable of the empty boat that taking life personally is a choice based on this illusion, and that freedom lies in seeing the emptiness of the colliding boats. We have realized that we are not isolated islands, but interconnected waves in the single ocean of being. This insight is not just a piece of dry, intellectual philosophy. It is the key that unlocks the boundless heart. As long as we believe we are a separate, fragile self, we live in fear. We must protect and defend our little territory. But when the walls of the separate self begin to dissolve, when we see our deep interconnection with all beings, something extraordinary happens. Their joy is no longer separate from our joy. Their suffering is no longer separate from our suffering. The wisdom that reveals our shared nature is the very ground from which the boundless qualities of the heart compassion, empathy, and loving kindness naturally and effortlessly grow. Having seen with our minds that we are all one, we are now ready to learn how to live from our hearts as if it were true. The journey into the wisdom of impermanence and non-self can feel like a deconstruction. We have taken apart our conventional reality piece by piece, seeing the transient and process-like nature of everything we once thought was solid, including our very own self. This seeing, this wisdom, is profoundly liberating, but it is only one wing of the bird. For the bird of awakening to fly, it needs two wings, the wing of wisdom and the wing of love. The insight that we are not separate, isolated islands, but interconnected waves in a single great ocean is not meant to lead to a cold, intellectual detachment. It is meant to crack open the heart. When the illusion of separation dissolves, it reveals a fundamental connection to all of life. This heartfelt recognition of our shared being has a name. It is called metta, a word from the Pali language, often translated as loving kindness. Metta is not the sentimental, conditional, or possessive love of songs and poems. It is a boundless, unconditional well-wishing for all beings, starting with the one being you are with every moment of your life, yourself. This is the radical starting point of the practice. We begin with ourselves. To many of us, this may feel counterintuitive, selfish, or even narcissistic. We may have been taught that self-love is indulgent, or that we should always put others first. But the wisdom of the path is clear. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot offer water to a thirsty person if your own well is dry. Trying to generate love and compassion for others when you are filled with inner conflict and self-aversion is like trying to light a candle for someone else while you yourself are standing in a storm. It is exhausting and ultimately unsustainable. Think of the safety instructions on an airplane. The first rule in a crisis is to secure your own oxygen mask before attempting to help the person next to you. This is not selfishness, it is wisdom. Without your own supply of oxygen, you are of no use to anyone. Cultivating loving kindness for yourself is the act of putting on your own oxygen mask. It is the essential, non-negotiable first step to creating a sustainable source of compassion that can then overflow naturally and authentically to the rest of the world. So how do we practice this? How do we begin to fill our own cup? The practice, known as metta bhavana, or the cultivation of loving kindness, is a gentle and systematic training of the heart. Find a posture that is both comfortable and dignified. Allow your eyes to softly close, and for a few moments, simply rest with the rhythm of your own breath, allowing your body and mind to settle. Then, gently bring to your mind's eye an image of yourself. It may feel more natural to picture yourself as a small, innocent child, full of vulnerability and deserving of love. Or you can simply generate a felt sense of your own presence right here, right now. Then, like a mother whispering a lullaby to her beloved child, you begin to silently offer yourself a series of well wishes, of heartfelt intentions. The traditional phrases are a good place to start. You can repeat them slowly, letting the intention behind them sink into your being. May I be safe and protected from all harm. May I be happy and at peace. May I be healthy and strong in body and mind. May I live my life with ease. There is no need to force a particular feeling. The words themselves are like seeds. Your job is not to force the flower to bloom, but simply to plant the seeds in the soil of your heart with sincerity. You can coordinate the phrases with your breath, perhaps reciting one line on the in-breath and one on the out-breath. Let the rhythm be spacious and unhurried. The tone is everything. It should be one of infinite tenderness and unconditional friendliness. You are offering yourself the very things you would wish for someone you love more than anyone else in the world. Safety, happiness, health, and ease. You are making friends with yourself, perhaps for the first time. For many of us, this practice can be surprisingly difficult. As you offer yourself these wishes, you may find that other voices arise in response. The voice of the inner critic may appear, shouting, "This is ridiculous. You don't deserve to be happy. Look at all your flaws." Or you may feel a sense of profound sadness or unworthiness, a deep-seated belief that you are somehow unlovable. Or you may feel nothing at all, just a numb emptiness. It is absolutely crucial to understand that this arising of resistance is not a sign that you are failing at the practice. In fact, it is a sign that the practice is working. The loving kindness is like a bright light being shone into the dark corners of your heart, revealing the wounds that need to be healed. The practice then becomes about holding this resistance itself with loving kindness. If the inner critic arises, you can gently offer it metta. May this judging mind be at peace. If a feeling of sadness arises, you can hold it with a tender awareness, as you would hold a crying child. If you feel nothing but numbness, you can be kind to the numbness. If sending kindness to I feels impossible, start somewhere easier. Bring to mind a beloved pet, a dear friend, or a respected teacher, someone for whom your love flows easily. Generate the warm feeling of metta for them. And once that feeling is strong, like warming your hands at a fire, gently try to turn that warmth toward yourself. Remember, the goal is not to win a battle against your resistance, but to embrace it with the same unconditional friendliness you are trying to cultivate. The power of metta is not to be underestimated. It is not a weak or sentimental emotion. It is described in the texts as a sublime and powerful state of heart, a force that can transform the world. This is illustrated in the story of the Buddha and the fierce elephant, Nalagiri. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, conspired to assassinate him. He arranged for Nalagiri, a notoriously savage elephant, to be intoxicated and set loose on the narrow street where the Buddha was walking. The enraged elephant charged, trumpeting wildly, and everyone fled in terror. The Buddha's own disciples urged him to run, but he stood his ground, perfectly calm. As the terrifying creature bore down upon him, the Buddha did not raise a weapon or show any fear. Instead, he radiated a powerful, boundless field of pure metta towards the enraged animal. This wave of unconditional loving kindness washed over the elephant. Its furious charge slowed. Its aggression melted away. The great beast came to a halt before the Buddha, lowered its trunk, and knelt peacefully, completely tamed, not by force, but by the overwhelming power of love. This story reminds us that metta has the power to tame the wild elephants of hatred, fear, and violence in the world around us. But more importantly, it has the power to tame the wild elephant of self-criticism and self-hatred within our own hearts. It is helpful to remember that this practice is a bhavana, a cultivation. It is a skill, not a feeling that you either have or you don't. Some days when you practice, you may feel a wonderful warmth and a deep connection to yourself. Cherish those moments. On other days, you may feel distracted, resistant, or numb. That is also part of the path. The point is not to force a particular feeling, but to maintain the sincere intention, the gentle and persistent effort of planting the seeds. You are like a gardener. You cannot command the seeds to sprout, but you can create the right conditions. You can water the soil, provide sunlight, and remove the weeds. The practice of repeating the phrases, of holding yourself with kindness, is the act of tending the garden of your heart. Over time, with consistent practice, this attitude of loving kindness will begin to seep into your daily life. It will become your new default, a quiet strength that underlies all that you do. We have now taken the essential first step on the journey of the heart. We have seen that to love the world, we must first learn to be a friend to ourselves. We have learned the gentle technology of the metta phrases, a way to plant seeds of kindness in our own being. We have explored the nature of our own resistance and learned to meet it with the very compassion we are trying to cultivate. And we have been inspired by the understanding that loving kindness is not a passive sentiment, but a transformative power. This practice of turning inward with tenderness and care is the foundation. It creates a wellspring of goodwill within us, filling our own cup until it is stable and full. But the nature of a full cup is that it must, eventually, overflow. The love that we have so carefully nurtured for ourselves cannot be contained. It naturally seeks to expand, to radiate outward, to touch the lives of others. Having planted this seed of metta and tended to its first tender sprout, we are now ready to let it grow, to expand the circle of our care beyond the self, and to begin to embrace all the beings with whom we share this interconnected existence. Having filled our own cup with the gentle rain of loving kindness, we discover a beautiful truth. The heart's capacity for love is not a finite resource. It is not a bank account that gets depleted with use. It is more like a flame. Lighting another person's candle with your own does not diminish your light. It only creates more light in the world. The metta we have cultivated for ourselves is now stable and warm, a gentle fire in the center of our being. Its nature is to radiate. The practice now is to learn how to consciously and skillfully direct this warmth outward, to systematically expand the circle of our care until it becomes boundless, leaving no one outside of its embrace. This is done through a traditional, time-tested sequence that allows us to stretch the muscle of our heart gently, without strain, moving from the easy to the more challenging. After establishing a sense of loving kindness for yourself, the first outward step is to bring to mind a benefactor. This is a person whom you deeply respect, admire, and for whom you feel a natural sense of gratitude. It could be a teacher, a mentor, a spiritual guide, or simply someone who showed you a profound kindness when you needed it most. Bring an image or a felt sense of this person into your heart. Picture them sitting in front of you and allow your natural feelings of respect and appreciation to arise. Then, just as you did for yourself, begin to offer them the phrases of metta. May you be safe and protected. May you be happy and at peace. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with ease. Notice how it feels to extend this goodwill. It often flows easily, carried on the current of your gratitude. Rest here for a few moments, simply bathing this respected person in the light of your benevolent wishes. Next, gently let the image of your benefactor dissolve, and in their place, bring to mind a dear friend. This could be a close family member, a cherished companion, someone with whom you share a deep bond of affection and trust. As you hold this person in your heart, acknowledge the richness of your connection. Then, begin to offer them the same phrases of loving kindness. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Observe the quality of this feeling. It may be different from the respect you felt for your benefactor, perhaps warmer, more intimate, more personal. There is no need to judge this difference. Simply notice it. You are exploring the many textures of love. As you offer these wishes to your dear friend, you are strengthening the bonds of your affection, purifying your relationship by focusing on your sincere wish for their ultimate well-being, free from any expectation of getting something in return. Now, the practice takes an interesting and important turn. Let the image of your dear friend go and bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see in your daily life, but for whom you feel neither strong liking nor disliking. It might be the person who serves you coffee in the morning, a cashier at the grocery store, a person you see on your daily commute, or a neighbor you know only well enough to nod to. You may not even know their name. This stage is a powerful antidote to the habit of indifference. It is the practice of breaking down the walls that separate us from the vast majority of humanity. We so often walk through our days seeing other people not as fellow beings, but as part of the scenery. This practice awakens us to their humanity. Hold this neutral person in your mind, and with a sense of sincere intention, offer them the phrases, "Just like me, this person wants to be happy. Just like me, this person wants to be free from suffering." Then, extend the wishes. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. At first, this may feel mechanical or strange, but as you continue, you may feel a subtle shift, a quiet opening of the heart, a recognition of your shared human condition. The stranger is no longer just a stranger, but a fellow being on this journey of life. We now arrive at the most challenging and perhaps most transformative stage of the practice. This is the act of sending loving kindness to a difficult person. Gently bring to mind someone with whom you have conflict, irritation, or resentment. It is wise to begin with someone who is only mildly difficult, not the person who has caused you the deepest trauma in your life. Now, it is absolutely essential to understand the purpose of this practice. This is not about condoning their harmful actions. It is not about forcing forgiveness before you are ready. It is not about letting them hurt you again. This practice is not for them. It is for you. It is an act of liberation for your own heart. Holding on to hatred, anger, and resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It only harms you, keeping you trapped in the prison of your own bitterness. The logic behind this practice is profound. A person who acts in harmful ways is, by definition, deeply unhappy. They are caught in the grip of the three poisons: greed, aversion, and ignorance. Happy, peaceful, and wise people do not cause suffering for others. Their harmful actions are a cry of their own pain. So, the wish of metta is not, "I hope you get everything you want." It is a much deeper wish. May you be free from the suffering, the anger, and the confusion that causes you to act in these harmful ways. May you find the peace and happiness that I am seeking for myself. Because if you were truly happy, you would no longer cause harm. This is a difficult, advanced practice. As you try to hold this person in your mind and offer the phrases, you may feel immense resistance. Anger may flare up. If it becomes too intense, be kind to yourself. Drop the image of the difficult person and return immediately to sending metta to yourself until you feel grounded and safe again. This is not a failure. It is a wise recognition of your limits. There is a story that captures the spirit of this unconditional goodwill. A monk was walking by a river when he saw a scorpion struggling in the water, about to drown. Moved by compassion, he reached down to lift it out. As he did, the scorpion stung his hand. The monk recoiled in pain, dropping the scorpion back into the water. Seeing it still struggling, he tried again, and again the scorpion stung him. A man standing on the bank saw this and shouted, "You fool! Why do you keep trying to help that creature? It only repays you with pain." The monk, looking at his swollen hand, replied calmly, "My friend, its nature is to sting. My nature is to save. This is the essence of true metta. It is not dependent on the other's behavior." The monk's kindness was unconditional. He recognized the scorpion's naturate's conditioned, defensive reaction without letting it corrupt his own compassionate nature. Sending metta to a difficult person is our way of choosing our own nature, of refusing to let another person's poison become our own. Finally, having worked with these specific individuals, we let the circle become boundless. We let go of all particular images and allow the feeling of loving kindness to radiate outward in all directions. First, extend it to all those in the room with you, then the building, then your city, then your country. Let it spread across the entire planet like a golden light, touching every living being without exception. Friends, enemies, strangers, humans, animals, beings, large and small, near and far, seen and unseen. Hold all beings in your heart and offer the great wish. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings everywhere be happy. May all beings everywhere be healthy. May all beings everywhere live with ease and be free from suffering. In this moment, you are dissolving the final boundaries of us and them, kin and other. You are resting in the profound truth of our interconnectedness, experiencing the boundless, limitless nature of the awakened heart. We have now journeyed through the expanding circles of loving kindness, from the tender act of making friends with ourselves, to the courageous act of wishing well for an enemy, to the boundless act of embracing all of life. We have seen that metta is a skill we can cultivate for our own liberation, a way of choosing to abide in love, regardless of the conditions we encounter. This practice is the powerful wish for all beings to find happiness and the causes of happiness. But life also presents us with the undeniable reality of pain. What happens when we are confronted directly with suffering our own or another's? In that moment, simply wishing for happiness may feel incomplete. A different, though closely related, quality of the heart is called for. It is the heart's direct, trembling response to the presence of pain. This quality is called karuna, or compassion. Having cultivated the sincere wish for all beings to be well, we must now learn how to be skillfully and courageously present with them and with ourselves when we are not. The practice of loving kindness, or metta, is the sincere wish for all beings to find happiness. It is like tending a garden, hoping for clear skies and gentle sun. But what happens when the storms inevitably come? What is the heart's response when it is confronted not with the aspiration for happiness, but with the raw, undeniable reality of pain? For this, the path offers a different, though intimately related, quality of the heart. It is called karuna, a word most often translated as compassion. If metta is the wish, may you be happy. Karuna is the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering, coupled with the sincere wish, may you be free from this pain. It is not a passive sentiment, but an active, engaged empathy. It is the heart's willingness to move towards suffering rather than away from it. And just as with loving kindness, the practice of compassion must begin at home, with our own wounds, our own sorrows, our own fears. We must first learn to be a true refuge for ourselves. The most powerful way to understand the practice of self-compassion is through the metaphor of a wise mother and her crying child. Imagine a small child falls and scrapes her knee. She runs to her mother, crying in pain and fear. A good mother does not shout at the child, "Stop crying! You're being weak." She does not ignore the child or distract her with a toy. And she does not start crying herself, becoming overwhelmed by the child's pain. Instead, she does something profoundly skillful. She kneels down, opens her arms, and holds the child close. She rocks her gently and whispers soothing words. "I'm here. It's okay. I know it hurts." She doesn't necessarily take the pain away, but she surrounds the pain with a vast, safe, and loving presence. This is the model for self-compassion. When a painful emotion arises within a wave of grief, a surge of anxiety, a pang of loneliness, a habitual reaction is often to treat it like an enemy. We try to suppress it, ignore it, numb it, or criticize ourselves for feeling it. The practice of karuna invites us to do the opposite, to treat our pain like that crying child. We learn to metaphorically pick it up, hold it in our awareness, and surround it with the warmth of our own gentle, non-judgmental presence. This is a practice we can do in any moment. When you notice a difficult emotion beginning to surface, the first step is simply to acknowledge it with mindfulness. Sadness is here. This is what fear feels like. This simple naming stops the unconscious spiral and brings you into the present. The next step is to locate the emotion in your body. Where do you feel this sadness? Is it a heaviness in your chest? A lump in your throat? Where does the anxiety live? As a churning in your stomach? A tightness in your shoulders? Grounding the emotion in a physical sensation makes it more tangible and less overwhelming. Then, you can bring your gentle, kind attention to that part of your body, as if you were placing a warm, soothing hand upon it. You are not trying to fix the feeling or force it to go away. You are simply offering it your steady, unwavering, and kind presence. You can use your breath as an ally in this process. As you breathe in, you can imagine you are breathing into that area of discomfort, gently acknowledging it, giving it space. As you breathe out, you can imagine you are offering it softness, release, and ease. You are becoming a safe container for your own experience, a loving parent to your own pain. It is vital to distinguish this profound practice of compassion from its paler cousin, pity. Pity looks down from above. It creates separation. It has an air of condescension. "Oh, you poor thing." When we pity ourselves, we are casting ourselves in the role of a helpless victim, which only reinforces our sense of powerlessness. Compassion, or karuna, is radically different. It is based on a recognition of equality and shared humanity. It says, "I know this kind of suffering. This is part of the human journey." It meets pain with respect, strength, and a sense of connection. When we offer ourselves compassion, we are not wallowing in self-pity. We are courageously acknowledging our vulnerability with wisdom and dignity. We are treating ourselves as we would treat a dear friend who is going through a difficult time. The journey from personal grief to universal compassion is beautifully told in the story of Kisa Gautami. She was a young woman whose infant son was the center of her world. One day, the child fell ill and died. Kisa Gautami was so consumed by a grief that shattered her sanity. She refused to believe her son was gone. Cradling his lifeless body, she wandered through her village, going from door to door, desperately begging for a medicine that could bring him back. The villagers, seeing her madness, turned her away until one person, taking pity on her, suggested she go and see the Buddha. She ran to him, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded for a cure. The Buddha, with his profound skill, did not dismiss her. He looked at her with immense compassion and said, "There is only one medicine that can help your son. You must go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no one has ever died." Filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gautami rushed back to the village. At the first house, she asked for a mustard seed, and the family was happy to give her one. But when she asked, "Has anyone in this house ever known death?" they looked at her with sad eyes. "The living are few," they said, "but the dead are many. We lost our father last year." She went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Every family was willing to give her a mustard seed, but every family had been touched by death. One had lost a wife, another a child, another a parent. As she went from door to door, a profound transformation began to take place within her. She realized that her own unique, unbearable sorrow was not unique at all. It was the sorrow of the world. Every person she met was carrying the same wound of loss. Her personal cry of "my suffering" slowly dissolved into the vast, empathetic ocean of the suffering of all beings. Her heart broke open, not with grief, but with compassion. She understood the universal truth of impermanence and loss. She returned to the Buddha, not with a mustard seed, but with an awakened heart, ready to truly hear his teaching. This story shows us that our own pain is not an obstacle on the path. It is the path itself. When we have the courage to face it, it becomes the doorway that connects us to all of humanity. This practice of compassion gives us the courage to stay present with what is difficult, rather than fleeing into our habitual forms of escape. So much of our modern lives are structured around avoiding discomfort. We numb ourselves with endless entertainment. We distract ourselves with busyness. We soothe ourselves with food or drink. Self-compassion offers a different way. It is the practice of bravery. It is the willingness to sit with our own restless, aching heart and offer it nothing more than our quiet, loving presence. We learn to trust that our awareness is vast enough to hold our pain without being destroyed by it. It is only by being willing to feel our wounds that we can ever truly allow them to heal. We cannot treat an injury by pretending it does not exist. Compassion is the act of gently cleaning the wound of our heart so that it can finally be exposed to the healing air of acceptance. We have now journeyed into the heart of Karuna, understanding it as the direct, tender response to the presence of pain. We have learned to become a loving parent to our own difficult emotions, holding them with a gentle and embodied presence. We have seen in the story of Kisa Gautami how our personal sorrow, when met with awareness, can blossom into a boundless compassion for all who suffer. And we have understood that this practice is not a form of weakness, but the highest expression of courage. We have now explored the heart's response to our own well-being through metta and to our own suffering through karuna. But our lives are inextricably linked with the lives of others. What then is the heart's response when we witness not their pain, but their joy? When we see the good fortune, the success, and the happiness of another person? Our conditioned mind often reacts with the poison of comparison or envy. The path of the awakened heart offers a beautiful and powerful antidote to this poison, a way to multiply the joy in the world. This is the sublime quality of mudita, or sympathetic joy. We have walked the paths of the heart, learning to meet ourselves and others with loving kindness, or metta, the sincere wish for all to be happy, we have explored the terrain of compassion, or karuna, the heart's courageous response to the presence of suffering. These practices attune us to the great joys and sorrows of life. But there is a third, sublime quality of the heart that is often overlooked in our competitive world, a quality that serves as the direct antidote to one of the most corrosive poisons of the mind, the poison of envy. This quality is called mudita, which translates as sympathetic or appreciative joy. It is the genuine, unselfish happiness that we can feel in response to the success, good fortune, and happiness of others. While metta wishes for future happiness and karuna responds to present suffering, mudita celebrates the happiness that is already here, right now, in the lives of those around us. Our culture often trains us in the opposite of mudita. We are conditioned to compare, to compete, to measure our own worth against the achievements of others. When we hear of a friend's promotion, a sibling's new relationship, or a colleague's public recognition, what is our first gut-level reaction? For many of us, if we are honest, it is a complex cocktail of feelings, and often a bitter taste of jealousy or envy arises. Envy stems from a deep, unconscious belief that life is a zero-sum game. It operates from a mindset of scarcity. It sees happiness, success, and good fortune as a single, limited pie. If someone else gets a big slice, envy whispers that there is now less pie for us. Another's victory feels like our defeat. This scarcity mindset is a source of immense and unnecessary suffering. It isolates us in a prison of resentment, making us unable to connect with others authentically. It shrinks our world, forcing us to see potential friends as rivals. Envy is a uniquely painful poison because it makes us suffer from the good things that happen in the world. Mudita is the radical shift from this scarcity mindset to a mindset of abundance. It understands that happiness is not a limited resource. Happiness is more like candlelight. When one lit candle is used to light another, the amount of light in the room doubles. The first candle loses absolutely nothing of its own flame. It only contributes to a greater brightness. Sympathetic joy is the realization that another person's happiness does not subtract from our own potential for joy. It adds to the total sum of happiness in the universe, a vast reservoir from which we can all draw inspiration and delight. To feel joy at another's good fortune is to give ourselves another opportunity to be happy, an opportunity that costs us nothing and is available every single day. It is the ultimate win-win situation. It frees us from the exhausting and lonely task of constant comparison and allows us to participate in the ocean of human joy that surrounds us. Like the other qualities of the heart, mudita is a skill that can be consciously cultivated. We can practice it in a formal meditation. After settling your mind, you can begin by bringing to mind a person for whom you feel a natural, uncomplicated happiness. Perhaps a dear friend who has recently fallen in love, achieved a long-sought goal, or is simply experiencing a period of deep contentment. Bring a vivid image of their happiness to your mind. See their smiling face, hear their joyful laughter, feel the vibrant energy of their success. As you hold this image, allow yourself to share in their joy. Let their happiness touch your own heart. Feel a smile come to your own face. Then, you can support this feeling with specific phrases, offered silently. I am so happy for you. May your joy and good fortune continue. May your happiness increase. You are intentionally rejoicing with them, making their happiness your own. A simple parable from the ancient texts illustrates the self-destructive nature of envy, the direct opposite of mudita. In one of the heavenly realms, the divine beings, or devas, were said to possess a radiant aura, a halo of light, whose brightness was a direct manifestation of their inner happiness and merit. One day, a particular deva looked across the celestial meadow and saw another deva whose halo was shining with a brilliance that far outshone his own. Immediately, the poison of envy entered his heart. He thought, "Why is his light so magnificent? Mine should be the brightest. It's not fair." As he sat there, consumed by these thoughts of bitterness and resentment, a strange thing began to happen. His own halo, which had been moderately bright, started to dim. The more he fixated on the other's success with a jealous mind, the more his own inner light faded, leaving him in a state of growing gloom. Meanwhile, the other deva, completely unaware and untroubled, continued to shine with undiminished splendor, his happiness utterly unaffected by the envy directed toward him. This story is a perfect metaphor for our own lives. Envy harms no one but the person who feels it. It is a self-inflicted wound. The object of our envy continues to shine, while we are the ones left sitting alone in the gathering darkness of our own making. Mudita is the act of choosing to step into their light and share in its warmth, which in turn brightens our own. Of course, it is one thing to practice this in meditation, and another to deal with the raw sting of envy when it arises in daily life. When you hear a piece of news that triggers that familiar feeling of jealousy, the first step is mindfulness. Simply recognize it without judgment. Ah, this is envy. This is the feeling of less than. Notice where you feel it in your body, perhaps a tightness in the chest, a sourness in the stomach. The second step is to offer yourself compassion. Recognize that behind the envy, there is always a feeling of pain. It is the pain of perceived lack, of insecurity, of wanting something you don't have. So, before you do anything else, be kind to that pain. You can say to yourself, "This feeling of lack is painful. It's okay to feel this way. May I be kind to myself." The third step is to make a conscious pivot. You have a choice. You can continue to water the seed of envy, replaying the story of unfairness in your mind. Or you can intentionally plant the seed of mudita, even if it feels artificial at first. You can silently, or even out loud, say, "Good for them. They have found some happiness. May that happiness continue." Even if you don't fully feel it, the conscious act of redirecting your intention begins to rewire the habitual neural pathways of envy. You are choosing to light a candle rather than curse the darkness. We have now explored the three great active qualities of the awakened heart. Metta is the wish for beings to have happiness. Karuna is the wish for beings to be free from suffering. And mudita is rejoicing when beings have already found happiness. These three, loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy, are like the engine, the sails, and the rudder of a great ship, propelling us across the ocean of life with warmth and purpose. But every great ship needs a steady keel to keep it from capsizing in the inevitable storms. It needs a quality that provides balance, stability, and unwavering calm. A quality that can hold both immense joy and immense sorrow without being thrown off course. This fourth and final sublime state is the foundation upon which the other three rest. It is the vast, peaceful container in which all of life's experiences can be held with wisdom and grace. This is the profound quality of upekkha, or equanimity. Having learned how to open our hearts so fully, we must now learn how to ground that open heart in unshakable peace. We have journeyed through the radiant, active qualities of the awakened heart. We have learned to cultivate metta, the warm sun of loving kindness that wishes for all beings to be happy. we have explored karuna, the tender embrace of compassion that moves towards suffering with the wish for it to be eased. And we have practiced mudita, the celebratory joy that delights in the good fortune of others. These three qualities open the heart, making it vast, empathetic, and connected. But for the heart to be truly boundless and of benefit to the world, it needs a fourth quality, one that serves as its foundation, its anchor, and its serene container. This is the sublime state of upekkha, or equanimity. It is the deep, unshakable peace of a mind in perfect balance. It is essential to understand, from the very beginning, what equanimity is not. Hearing the word, we might imagine a cold indifference, a detached apathy, or a stoic suppression of emotion. This is a complete misunderstanding. Indifference is a state of shutting down, of not caring. It is rooted in aversion and fear. Equanimity is the very opposite. It is the result of a heart that is so open, so vast, and so full of love that it can hold all of life's experiences without being thrown off balance. Equanimity is not born of a closed heart, but of a wise one. It is the natural expression of a mind that has deeply understood the truths of impermanence, anicca, and non-self, anatta. Because we know, in our bones, that all experiences are fleeting, we do not desperately cling to the pleasant ones or violently push away the unpleasant ones. Because we know that there is no solid, separate self to be aggrandized or defended, we are not so easily hooked by praise or devastated by blame. Equanimity is a deep, abiding peace that is not dependent on whether life is giving us what we want. It is a radical state of non-reactivity, of profound inner stillness, even in the midst of a storm. The Buddha taught that an ordinary, untrained mind is constantly being blown about by what he called the 8 worldly winds. These are the inevitable ups and downs of human existence, which come in 4 pairs of opposites. The first pair is pleasure and pain. Our lives are a constant ebb and flow of pleasant and unpleasant feelings, both physical and emotional. The second pair is gain and loss. We acquire possessions, money, and status, and we lose them. The third pair is praise and blame. Some people will speak well of us and approve of our actions, while others will criticize and disapprove. And the final pair is fame and disrepute. At times we may enjoy a good reputation, and at other times we may find ourselves the subject of gossip and ill will. An ordinary mind is like a leaf caught in these 8 winds, constantly being blown toward pleasure, gain, praise, and fame, and desperately trying to flee from pain, loss, blame, and disrepute. This constant chasing and fleeing is the source of our exhaustion and anxiety. The practice of equanimity is the cultivation of a mind that is like a great, unshakable mountain. The winds still blow, they will always blow, but the mountain is not moved. It remains stable, grounded, and at peace, allowing the winds to pass without being disturbed. We have already met the perfect embodiment of this mountainous stability in the Zen master Hakuin. His simple response, "Is that so?" is a masterclass in equanimity. When the fierce winds of blame and disrepute blew against him, when he was falsely accused and his reputation was destroyed, he did not resist. He did not defend his ego or lash out in anger. He simply accepted the reality of the situation and cared for the child. This was not indifference. His actions were full of care. It was a lack of inner reactivity. He was not shaken. Then, when the winds changed and the gales of praise and fame blew in his favor, his response was identical. He did not bask in the praise, demand apologies, or feel the satisfaction of vindication. He was just as unattached to the good opinion of the villagers as he was to the bad. His inner peace was not for sale. It was not dependent on external conditions. He demonstrated that true freedom is not found in controlling the winds of life, but in cultivating a mind that is no longer blown about by them. How then do we practice becoming the mountain instead of the leaf? We can begin in our formal meditation. As we sit and watch the flow of our experience, we notice the mind's subtle habits. When a pleasant sensation or a happy memory arises, notice the mind's tendency to lean in, to grasp, to want more. When an unpleasant feeling or a difficult thought appears, notice the tendency to pull back, to resist, to wish it were gone. The practice of equanimity is to see this leaning and pulling, and to consciously relax the effort. It is to allow both the pleasant and the unpleasant to arise, exist, and pass away in the spaciousness of our awareness, without preference. We can use the thought, "This too shall pass," as a wise reminder for both the enjoyable and the difficult moments. In daily life, we can practice in the same way. When you receive a compliment, feel the little jolt of pleasure, but also recognize its fleeting nature without clinging to it. When you face a small disappointment, feel the sting of it, but also recognize that this feeling is not permanent, without catastrophizing. The practice is to constantly widen our perspective, to see each experience not as an ultimate reality, but as one small wave rising and falling in the vast ocean of our life. Equanimity is not only a profound state in itself, it is also the guardian and protector of the other three boundless qualities of the heart. It ensures that our love is wise and sustainable. It protects our loving kindness, our metta, from becoming biased preference or clinging attachment. A mother's love for her own child is beautiful, but if it prevents her from caring about the suffering of other children, it is not boundless. Equanimity helps our metta to be universal and impartial. It also protects our compassion, our karuna. To be present with the immense suffering of the world can be overwhelming. Without equanimity, we can be consumed by it, leading to compassion fatigue or burnout. Equanimity provides the calm, stable strength that allows us to be with pain, our own and others, without drowning in it. It allows us to help wisely and effectively, and it protects our sympathetic joy, our mudita, keeping it from turning into a kind of heedless excitement or a vicarious attachment to someone else's success, which can lead to disappointment later. Equanimity is the wise, spacious container that holds the other three heart practices, allowing them to function at their highest potential, free from the pitfalls of attachment and bias. It is the mature wisdom that perfectly balances the heart's immense capacity to feel. We have now explored the fourth and final pillar of the awakened heart. Equanimity is not a cold and distant state, but a profound and unshakable peace that is born of wisdom. It is the inner strength to stand firm and balanced amidst the 8 worldly winds, like the great mountain that is unmoved by the storm. It is the serene guardian that holds our loving kindness, our compassion, and our sympathetic joy in a container of boundless, intelligent care. With the cultivation of these 4 divine abidings, we now possess a complete and powerful inner toolkit. We have a heart that is trained to be both immeasurably warm and profoundly stable. The journey of inner transformation has given us the instruments. The next stage of our path is to learn how to play this beautiful music in the world, specifically in the complex and often challenging orchestra of our human relationships. The great question now becomes, how can we use this wise, compassionate, joyful, and balanced heart to transform the very way we speak and listen to one another. We have journeyed inward, learning to sit with the breath, to observe the ceaseless chatter of the mind, and to hold our own suffering with the tenderness of a mother holding her child. We have cultivated the 4 immeasurable states of mind: loving, kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. We have built a sanctuary within ourselves. But this practice is not meant to remain in silent isolation. Its true test and its greatest flowering occurs when we step out of our inner sanctuary and engage with the world, specifically in our relationships with others. For it is here, in the complex, beautiful, and often painful dance of human connection, that our practice becomes truly alive. Our interactions with partners, family, friends, and colleagues are the fertile and sometimes rocky soil where the seeds of mindfulness and compassion can either wither or grow into a mighty tree, offering shade to all. The Buddha taught that our relationships can be our greatest spiritual practice. They are mirrors that reflect our own unresolved issues, our attachments, and our deepest fears. A difficult person is not merely an obstacle, but a teacher in disguise, showing us where our equanimity is weak, where our compassion has not yet reached. A loving relationship is not just a source of comfort, but an opportunity to practice selfless giving and sympathetic joy. To navigate this complex territory, the teachings offer us 2 of the most profound and practical tools available: deep listening and loving speech. These are not mere communication techniques. They are forms of meditation in action, ways of transforming every conversation from a potential battlefield into a sacred space of healing and understanding. Let us first explore deep listening. In our modern world, we are starved of being truly heard. We engage in conversations, but often we are not listening. We are waiting for our turn to speak. We are formulating a rebuttal in our minds. We are judging the other person's words through the filter of our own opinions and experiences. We are listening to respond, not to understand. The result is a profound sense of isolation. Even when we are surrounded by people, we speak, but our words fall into a void. Deep listening is the antidote to this isolation. It is the practice of offering someone our full, undivided, and non-judgmental attention. It is a gift of presence, perhaps the most precious gift one human being can give another. To listen deeply is to set aside your own story, your own needs, your own agenda for a few moments, and to create a space of pure receptivity for the other person. It is an act of compassion, a recognition that the person before you, just like you, has a deep desire to be seen, to be heard, and to be understood. To practice deep listening, we begin, as always, with mindfulness. When you enter a conversation with the intention to listen deeply, bring your awareness to your body. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel the breath entering and leaving your body. This anchors you in the present moment, preventing your mind from being carried away by distraction or reaction. Your sole purpose is to understand. This intention is a powerful shield against the habit of judgment and interruption. As the other person speaks, you listen not just with your ears, but with your whole being. You listen to the words, but you also listen to the spaces between the words. You listen to the tone of their voice, to their body language. You listen for the emotion that lies beneath the surface of their story. Are they speaking from a place of anger? If so, what is the pain or fear that is fueling that anger? Are they expressing frustration? If so, what is the unmet need they are trying to communicate? You are not listening for the facts alone. You are listening for the suffering, for the aspiration, for the humanity of the person in front of you. When your own mind begins to formulate a response or a judgment, as it inevitably will, you simply notice it, and gently, compassionately, you let it go and return your full attention to the speaker. You are holding a space for them, allowing them to empty their heart without fear of criticism or advice. In many cases, this act of listening alone is enough to bring about healing. To be able to speak one's truth into a space of silent, compassionate acceptance is profoundly liberating. This leads us to the other wing of the bird of communication, loving speech. Loving speech, or what is known in Sanskrit as aingr, is the natural outcome of deep listening. When you have truly understood another person's suffering and their deepest needs, you cannot help but speak to them with kindness. Your words cease to be weapons and become instruments of healing. Loving speech is not about being nice or avoiding difficult topics. It is about speaking the truth, but speaking it with compassion. The teachings offer a beautiful guide for this practice, often called the 3 gates. Before you speak, you should ask yourself if your words can pass through these 3 gates. The first gate is it true? This gate immediately prevents us from engaging in gossip, spreading rumors, or speaking falsehoods. It grounds our speech in reality and integrity. We commit to not adding to the confusion and misinformation in the world. If the words are true, they must then pass through the second gate. Is it necessary? This is a much harder gate to pass. How much of what we say in a day is truly necessary? Much of our speech is driven by the ego's desire to be right, to have the last word, to offer an opinion, or simply to fill the silence. This gate invites us to practice a noble silence, to speak only when it truly contributes something of value to the situation. It teaches us restraint and the power of saying less. Finally, if what we wish to say is both true and necessary, it must pass through the third and most important gate. Is it kind? Can this truth be spoken with a heart of compassion? Can it be framed in a way that the other person can actually hear it? This gate recognizes that words can be a balm or a blade. Even a necessary truth, if spoken without kindness, can cause immense harm, closing the other person's heart and making understanding impossible. If you find that you cannot speak the truth with kindness, it is often better to wait, to return to your practice of deep listening and cultivating compassion until your heart is soft enough to speak in a way that heals rather than harms. There is a powerful story from the life of the Buddha that illustrates this principle. The community of monks at Kosambi had fallen into a bitter dispute over a minor point of monastic discipline. The conflict escalated, dividing the entire community. Factions were formed, and the monks refused to even speak to one another. The Buddha went to them and tried to reason with them, telling them stories and reminding them of the importance of harmony. But their hearts were closed, consumed by anger and self-righteousness. They told the Buddha to leave them alone, that this was their affair. Seeing that more words would only add fuel to the fire, the Buddha did something remarkable. He said nothing. He simply turned and in silence walked away, leaving the community to its own devices and spending his time in solitude in the forest. His silence was not an act of abandonment or indifference. It was the most powerful form of loving speech he could offer at that moment. It was a silence that spoke volumes. It said, "I cannot force you to be harmonious. The source of this conflict is within you, and so is the solution. I trust in your ability to find it." Left to themselves, the lay supporters of the community began to shun the monks, refusing to give them alms. Faced with the direct consequences of their discord, the monks finally came to their senses. They realized the folly of their argument and reconciled. The Buddha's silence created a space a vacuum that they had to fill with their own reflection. It was an act of profound trust and skillful compassion, far more effective than any angry lecture or reasoned argument could have been. Let us bring this into our own lives. Imagine you are in a conflict with your partner. They are speaking to you with anger. Your immediate, untrained reaction is to defend yourself, to counterattack, to point out their flaws. But instead, you pause, you take a breath, you remember the practice, you set the intention. My only goal is to understand their suffering. You listen. You hear the words of accusation, but you listen more deeply for the pain behind them. Perhaps the pain of not feeling seen, the fear of being abandoned, the frustration of being misunderstood. You just listen, holding that space. When it is your turn to speak, you guide your words through the 3 gates. Is what I am about to say true? Yes. Is it necessary to say this now? Perhaps not all of it. Is it kind? Can I speak my truth without blaming them? Perhaps you say something simple, like, I hear how much pain you are in. I am sorry for my part in that. Help me understand more. In that moment, the entire dynamic of the relationship shifts. It is no longer a battle between 2 egos. It is a shared space of practice, a collaborative search for understanding and healing. Every conversation becomes a chance to practice. Every disagreement becomes a laboratory for compassion. Our relationships, once the source of our greatest stress, now become the path to our deepest liberation. They are the living embodiment of the practice, the place where we learn to see the Buddha, the inherent goodness, in ourselves and in each other. Through the practices of deep listening and loving speech, we learn to transform our relationships into a field of mindfulness, turning sources of conflict into opportunities for profound connection and healing. Yet, even with the best intentions, we may find these relationships strained, not by a lack of love, but by a pervasive, underlying stress. A stress that whispers to us that we are not enough, that we do not have enough. It is the pressure to work longer hours, to chase the next promotion, to acquire the bigger house, the newer car, the latest technology. This constant, humming anxiety is the soundtrack of modern life, and it stems directly from our collective immersion in a world of materialism. We have healed our communication. Now we must look at the source of the dis-ease that so often poisons it. We must investigate our relationship with things, and in doing so, discover the nature of true wealth. Our modern world is like a grand, dazzling bazaar, endlessly calling out to us. From every screen, every billboard, every corner of our digital and physical lives, a single message is broadcast in 1,000 different forms. You are incomplete. There is a hole inside of you, a fundamental lack, but it can be filled. The cure, we are told, is just one purchase away. This new gadget will make you more efficient and therefore more worthy. This fashionable garment will make you more desirable. This luxury car will broadcast your success to the world, proving your value. We are conditioned from birth to believe that the path to happiness is paved with acquisitions. And so, we begin to run. We run on a device the psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. The process is as predictable as it is exhausting. A desire arises, sparked by an advertisement or the sight of something a friend possesses. It grows into a powerful craving, an itch in the mind that promises relief only through acquisition. We focus our energy, our time, our very life force on obtaining this thing, and then we get it. There is a momentary thrill, a surge of pleasure and satisfaction. The itch is scratched. For a brief time, we feel whole, complete, but it never lasts. The novelty fades. The new car becomes just. The car, the new phone, once a marvel, becomes a mundane tool. The pleasure evaporates, and the baseline sense of lack returns, sometimes even stronger than before. And then, the bazaar cries out again with a new promise, a new cure for our incompleteness, and we begin to run once more. This is not a personal failing. It is the very engine of our consumer society. It is a cycle of craving, acquisition, and dissatisfaction. It is, in its essence, a perfect illustration of dukkha, the fundamental unsatisfactoriness that the Buddha identified as the core of our unexamined lives. We expend our precious, finite existence chasing phantoms, forever seeking happiness outside of ourselves, in things that by their very nature are transient and unable to provide lasting peace. The wisdom of the Buddha offers a radical alternative, a way to step off this exhausting treadmill altogether. It is a principle known as Thieu Duc Tri Tuc in Vietnamese, which can be translated as little desire, no sufficiency. It is the profound and liberating wisdom of contentment. Our society tells us that freedom is the ability to get everything you want. The Buddha taught that true freedom is the ability to not want, to be content with what you have. It is the realization that happiness does not come from adding more and more to your life, but from gently subtracting the desires that cause you to suffer. It is a shift from the external game of accumulation to the internal art of appreciation. It is the understanding that the richest person is not the one who has the most, but the one who needs the least. There is an old story that perfectly illuminates this truth. A great king who possessed immense power and lived in a palace filled with unimaginable luxury found himself plagued by a persistent feeling of emptiness. He had everything a man could possibly desire, yet he felt poor in spirit. He heard tales of a wise ascetic who lived in a nearby forest, a man who possessed nothing but was said to be deeply happy. Intrigued and skeptical, the king went to find him. He found the ascetic sitting peacefully under a tree, wearing a simple patched robe, with only a wooden bowl by his side. The king, in his fine silks, asked the ascetic, "I have armies, palaces, and storehouses overflowing with gold, yet I am not happy. You have nothing. How can you be so content?" The ascetic smiled gently and replied, "Your Majesty, I do have something. I have contentment." The king was puzzled. "What do you mean?" The ascetic elaborated, "You look at the world, and you see all the things you do not yet possess. You want to conquer the neighboring kingdom. You want a more opulent palace. You want even more treasures. Your life is a constant state of wanting. I look at the world, and I want for nothing. I have my robe, my bowl, and the shade of this tree. This is enough. Now, let me ask you, Your Majesty, wealth can be measured by the gap between what one has and what one wants. Your gap is a vast chasm. My gap is non-existent. So, who is truly the richer man?" The king stood in stunned silence, for he finally understood. He had been a slave to his desires, while this simple man, who owned nothing, was a king in his own mind. This story forces us to redefine wealth. We have been taught that wealth is a number in a bank account, a collection of assets. But what if true wealth is something else entirely? True wealth is spiritual wealth. It is the wealth of time, the freedom to spend your days in meaningful pursuits, rather than trading your life hours for things you don't truly need. It is the wealth of peace, the inner quiet that allows you to enjoy a simple sunset without feeling the urge to check your phone or plan your next move. It is the wealth of relationships, the deep, authentic human connections that are nurtured by presence and attention, not by expensive gifts. And it is the wealth of health, the vitality of your body and mind, which is so often sacrificed on the altar of ambition and accumulation. These are the true treasures, the things that cannot be bought, and the things we so often lose in our frantic pursuit of their pale imitations. How then do we cultivate this true wealth? We do it by bringing our practice of mindfulness to the very act of consumption. This is the practice of mindful consumption. It means creating a space of awareness between the arising of a desire and the act of purchasing. Before you buy something, especially something that is not an essential need, you can pause, take a breath, and ask yourself a few simple, penetrating questions. First, what is the feeling that is driving this desire? Shine the light of awareness on your inner state. Am I feeling bored, lonely, insecure? Am I feeling envious of someone else? Be honest with yourself. Often, we shop not because we need something, but because we are trying to medicate an uncomfortable feeling. Second, ask, what do I truly believe this object will give me? What is the unconscious promise I have attached to it? Do I believe it will make me happy, respected, loved, secure? See the story that your mind has constructed around this object. Third, ask with sincere curiosity, is this belief true? Look back at your past experiences. The last time you bought something to make you happy, how long did that happiness last? This honest reflection breaks the spell, revealing the illusion for what it is. Finally, ask, what is the true cost of this object? The cost is not just the number on the price tag. The true cost is the hours of your life you had to trade to earn that money. It is the mental space the object will occupy. It is the environmental impact of its production and disposal. When you see the full cost, the allure of the object often diminishes significantly. This practice is not about forcing yourself into a life of harsh austerity. It is about reclaiming your freedom. It is about making conscious choices from a place of wisdom and inner sufficiency, rather than being a puppet of your unexamined cravings and the relentless conditioning of society. It is the path to discovering that you already have enough. You already are enough. The peace you are seeking is not in the next purchase. It has been inside you all along, waiting quietly beneath the noise of wanting. By letting go of our desperate grasp on things, we find ourselves holding something far more precious, a serene and contented heart. Having learned to loosen our grip on the endless pursuit of material things, we have begun to taste a lighter, more spacious way of being. We see that true wealth is not in what we accumulate, but in the peace that comes from wanting less. This practice of letting go is a profound first step. Now, we must turn our gentle, non-judgmental awareness to the one thing we cling to most tightly, the attachment that underlies all other attachments, our very own life. In our modern culture, death is the last taboo. It is a subject we avoid, a reality we deny, a presence we scrub clean from our daily lives and hide behind hospital walls. We speak of it in hushed tones and euphemisms, as if ignoring it could somehow make it go away. The wisdom of the Buddha invites us to do the exact opposite. It invites us to turn and look directly, with courage and compassion, at the reality of our own mortality. This is not a morbid fascination with the macabre. It is, in fact, one of the most powerful and life-affirming practices we can undertake. For it is only by confronting the truth of our finitude that we can learn to live a life of true depth, meaning, and vibrant aliveness. The fear of death is perhaps the most fundamental fear of all. But what is it that we are actually afraid of? When we look deeply, we see that we are not afraid of the biological process itself, but of the perceived annihilation of me. It is the ultimate threat to the ego, everything we identify with this body, these thoughts, these memories, this name, this storyal of it is predicated on continued existence. The concept of I and mine, which we have spent our entire lives constructing and defending, is faced with its complete dissolution. This fear is the natural consequence of the illusion of a solid, permanent, and separate self. Having spent a lifetime believing we are this isolated entity, this wave separate from the ocean, the thought of crashing upon the shore is terrifying. The practice of contemplating death is therefore a direct practice of seeing through this illusion of the separate self, of loosening our grip on the story of me. This practice has a formal name, Marana Sati, which translates to mindfulness of death. It is the practice of maintaining a gentle, consistent awareness of the impermanence of all life, especially our own. It is not about sinking into despair, but about using this stark reality as a catalyst for awakening. You can begin this contemplation in a quiet moment of reflection. First, bring to mind the absolute certainty of death. It is not a possibility, it is a certainty for every being that has ever been born. Great kings, spiritual masters, the wealthy, the poor, the strong, the weak all have met and will meet the same end. There is no escape. Acknowledge this simple, unassailable fact. Second, reflect on the complete uncertainty of the time of death. We live with the unspoken assumption that we have plenty of time, that death is something far off in the distant future, but we do not know this. It could be in 50 years, or it could be this afternoon. An accident, a sudden illness, the thread of life is far more fragile than we care to admit. The practice is to hold this uncertainty in our awareness, not to create anxiety, but to vanquish complacency. Now, with this awareness of the certainty of death and the uncertainty of its timing, ask yourself the most important questions. If you knew, with absolute certainty, that this was your last day on earth, what would you do? Who would you call? What words of love, long held back by pride or shyness, would you finally speak? What forgiveness, for yourself or for another, would you finally offer? What petty grudges, what anxieties about your career, what worries about your reputation would suddenly seem utterly insignificant? In an instant, this contemplation acts as a powerful clarifying agent. It cuts through the fog of our daily distractions and illuminates what is truly essential. The urgent need to win an argument, the bitterness over a past slight, the craving for more recognition, all of it dissolves like smoke in the vastness of this perspective. You see with perfect clarity that the only things that have ever truly mattered are the quality of your presence and the love in your heart. The fruits of this practice are immediate and transformative. When you live with an awareness of how short and precious life is, not just for you, but for everyone, your heart naturally softens. It becomes much more difficult to hold on to anger and resentment. That person who wronged you, they too are impermanent. They too are living a fragile existence, driven by their own pains and delusions, and they too will face their end. Seeing this commonality, this shared vulnerability, makes forgiveness a natural, compassionate response. You let go of grievances, not as a favor to others, but as a gift of peace to yourself, refusing to waste your precious moments carrying such heavy burdens. This awareness also infuses your life with a sense of sacred urgency. You stop sleepwalking. You stop procrastinating on what is truly important. The book you wanted to write, the journey you wanted to take, the reconciliation you wanted to make you realize the only time to do these things is now. You stop living in the past, which is gone, or in the future, which is not promised. You begin to inhabit the present moment fully, because you understand, on a cellular level, that the present moment is all you ever truly have. Every simple act, drinking a cup of tea, watching the rain fall, listening to a piece of music, having a conversation with a friend, becomes imbued with a richness and poignancy it did not have before. This is the ultimate cure for taking life for granted. There is a timeless story about Alexander the Great, who, at the height of his power, had conquered most of a known world. As he lay dying, he gave his generals 3 final commands. First, he said, "I want my physicians, and only my physicians, to carry my coffin to the grave." Second, he commanded, "I want the path to my grave to be strewn with the gold, silver, and precious stones from my treasury." And third, he whispered, "My final wish is for you to let my hands hang empty outside of the coffin for all to see." One of his generals, astonished, asked for the meaning of these strange requests. Alexander explained, "I want the most eminent physicians to carry my coffin to show that in the face of death, even the best doctors have no power to heal. I want the path strewn with my wealth, so that everyone can see that the material riches gained on earth stay on earth. And I want my hands to hang empty, so that people can understand that we come into this world with empty hands, and we leave this world with empty hands." The most powerful man on earth wanted his final lesson to be one of utter humility and non-attachment. This leads to a final, more subtle understanding. While the ego fears annihilation, the Buddhist teachings suggest that death is not an absolute end, but a transformation. Think of a wave on the ocean. It rises from the water, takes on a unique form, travels for a time, and then merges back into the ocean. From the perspective of the wave, it has died. But has the water been annihilated? No, it has simply changed form. In the same way, we can see our lives not as isolated events, but as part of a vast, unbroken continuity. The energy of our actions, our karma, continues. The love we have given, the kindness we have shared, the wisdom we have cultivated, these do not vanish. They continue to ripple outwards, touching countless other lives in ways we may never know. Our physical bodies, too, do not disappear. They return to the earth to be transformed into new life. Viewing death as a transformation rather than an annihilation can gently soften the fear and replace it with a sense of participation in the great, mysterious cycle of existence. Ultimately, the practice of Marana Sati is not about death. It is the most powerful practice there is for living a full, authentic, and compassionate life. By befriending the reality of our death, we are finally liberated to truly live. We wake up from the dream of tomorrow and arrive fully and gratefully in the miracle of today. Having looked unflinchingly at the reality of our own impermanence, we arrive at a place of profound sobriety and appreciation for the present moment. By befriending the idea of death, we learn to live without the constant, underlying hum of fear. This fearlessness, this deep inner peace that comes from accepting reality as it is a doorway. It leads us to the heart of the Buddha's teaching, to a concept so often misunderstood, so often shrouded in mystery and exoticism, that its simple, radical truth is easily missed. It leads us to the concept of nirvana. For most of us, the word nirvana conjures images of a distant, celestial paradise, a heavenly realm one enters after death, as a reward for a virtuous life. We imagine it as a destination, a final escape from the sorrows of this world. This interpretation, however, is a fundamental misunderstanding of the Buddha's most liberating discovery. The Buddha's teaching was not about securing a happy afterlife. Its power, its urgency, its revolutionary nature lies in the fact that liberation is possible right here, right now, in this very life, in this very body. Nirvana is not a place you go to. It is a state you uncover within yourself. It is not a future destination, but the very nature of the path itself. Our task, then, is to demystify nirvana, to bring it down from the heavens and find its reality in the soil of our own direct experience. To understand what nirvana is, it is helpful first to understand its literal meaning. The Sanskrit word nirvana means to extinguish or to blow out, like blowing out a candle flame. This immediately begs the question, what is being extinguished? The answer is the very source of our suffering. The Buddha described the mind of an unenlightened person as being on fire. It is consumed by three great fires that cause all our anguish. The first is the fire of greed or craving. This is the hot, insatiable flame of wanting, the endless thirst for pleasant sensations, for possessions, for power, for recognition. It is the feeling of, if only I had that, then I would be happy. It is a fire that can never be satisfied, because the more you feed it, the hotter it burns. The second is the fire of aversion or hatred. This is the scorching, reactive fire of pushing away what is unpleasant. It is the fire of anger, irritation, resentment, and judgment. It manifests as tension in the body and bitterness in the heart. It is the pain we feel when reality does not conform to our desires. The third, and most fundamental, is the fire of ignorance or delusion. This is the dark, smoldering fire of not seeing things as they truly are. It is the delusion of a separate, permanent self, the ignorance of impermanence, and the failure to understand the true cause of suffering. This fire of ignorance is the fuel for the other two. Because we mistakenly believe we are a separate self, we are constantly trying to protect it with greed and defend it with aversion. Nirvana, therefore, is the state of mind that is revealed when these three fires have been extinguished. It is not the addition of something new. It is not the attainment of some superpower. It is the uncovering of the mind's natural, inherent state, a state of profound peace, clarity, and unconditional freedom. It is the peace that remains when the war within the self has ended. It is the quiet that is found when the clamor of craving and aversion has ceased. This peace is described as unconditioned because it does not depend on external circumstances. It is not the happiness that comes from getting what you want, or the relief that comes from avoiding what you don't want. Both of those are conditioned, fleeting, and unreliable. The peace of nirvana is the unshakable calm of the deep ocean, which remains still and silent, regardless of the storms raging on the surface. It is the vast, open sky, which is never stained or harmed by the darkest clouds that pass through it. Life still happens. There is still pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame. But these events no longer have the power to ignite the fires of suffering, because the fuel of greed, hatred, and ignorance has been removed. This may still sound like a lofty, far-off goal, something reserved for saints and sages, but here is the most important part of the teaching. Nirvana is not a single, final event. It is experienced in moments, and these moments are accessible to us all, right now. Every time you practice, you are touching nirvana. When you sit down to meditate and you manage, even for a single breath, to be fully present, free from the pull of the past or the future, in that moment, the fire of delusion is cooled. That is a moment of nirvana. When someone insults you and you feel the hot flush of anger rise, but you are able to pause, breathe, and choose not to react, allowing the anger to dissipate without taking hold. In that moment, the fire of aversion is extinguished. That is a taste of nirvana. When you feel a strong craving for something, and instead of immediately acting on it, you observe the craving with mindful awareness, watching it rise and fall like a wave without being swept away by it. In that moment, the fire of greed is quenched. That is the coolness of nirvana. Happiness, from this perspective, is not something to be pursued in the future. It is the natural consequence of purifying the mind in the present. It is the fragrance that naturally emanates from a mind that is free. The path and the goal are one and the same. Every mindful step, every compassionate action, every moment of letting go is not a step towards nirvana. It is an expression of nirvana. A story is told of an earnest seeker who had studied all the scriptures and traveled to many teachers, searching for the way to nirvana. Finally, he came to the Buddha himself. He bowed and asked with great sincerity, "Enlightened one, I have sought for so long. Please, tell me, which is the path that leads to nirvana?" The Buddha looked at the man, his gaze filled with a deep and knowing compassion. He did not speak. He simply sat in serene silence, and a gentle, subtle smile touched his lips. The seeker was confused and a little disappointed. He had come so far for a secret teaching, and he received only silence and a smile. Seeing his confusion, one of the Buddha's senior disciples gently led the man aside. The man expressed his frustration. "I asked for the way, and the master gave me nothing." The disciple replied softly, "He gave you everything. You were looking for a map, a set of instructions. But nirvana is not a place on a map. The Buddha showed you the way directly. The way is in that quality of profound silence in his mind, a mind that is not agitated by the need to speak. The way is in the quality of that smile, a heart that is completely free from ill will and filled with loving kindness. The path to nirvana is a mind of nirvanic quality. It is right here. It is not a place to get to, but a way to be, in this very moment. This is the invitation. Stop striving for a future peace. Stop chasing a distant state of bliss. The peace you seek is already here, buried beneath the ashes of your conditioning. The entire spiritual journey is simply the patient, compassionate work of sweeping away those ashes, moment by moment. It is the work of extinguishing the fires of greed, hatred, and ignorance with the water of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. And in doing so, we discover that we were never truly lacking. We were never fundamentally broken. We were just asleep, dreaming that we were on fire. To awaken is to realize the coolness, the peace, the freedom that has been our true nature all along. We have journeyed to the heart of the matter, realizing that nirvana, the profound peace of liberation, is not a distant star in a future sky, but a quality of mind that can be touched in this very moment. We have seen that every mindful breath, every act of compassion, every moment of letting go is a taste of this freedom. This understanding is beautiful, it is inspiring, but it also raises a crucial, practical question. How do we live this way? How do we carry the stillness of the meditation cushion into the chaos of the marketplace, the pressure of the workplace, and the complexities of family life. It is one thing to feel peaceful in the sanctuary of a quiet room, but quite another to maintain that peace amidst traffic jams, deadlines, and disagreements. The final stage of our journey together is not about learning new concepts, but about weaving the threads of this wisdom into the very fabric of our daily existence. It is about integrating our practice so that our life itself becomes the meditation. The first and most foundational strategy is to create an anchor for your day through formal practice. Think of this as making a non-negotiable appointment with yourself, with your own well-being. This does not require you to become a monastic or spend hours in meditation. The power is in consistency, not duration. 5 to 10 minutes of dedicated formal sitting meditation each day is far more transformative than a heroic 1-hour session once a month. This daily appointment is your time to train the mind, just as an athlete trains their body in the gym. Find a consistent time, perhaps right after you wake up, before the day's demands begin, or in the evening to decompress. Find a consistent place, even if it's just a particular chair in a corner of a room, that you associate with this practice of stillness. During this time, you are not trying to achieve anything spectacular. You are simply showing up, returning to your breath, and strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. This formal practice acts as a powerful anchor, mooring the ship of your awareness. Without it, you are more likely to be swept away by the winds and currents of the day. With it, you have a reference point of calm to which you can always return. However, the goal of the practice is not just to be peaceful for 10 minutes a day. The purpose of the training in the gym is to use that strength in the game of life. This is where we learn to weave mindfulness into the moments between our formal sittings. We can do this by establishing what the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh called bells of mindfulness. These are not literal bells, but everyday sounds and events that we can use as reminders to come back to the present moment. The ringing of your telephone, for instance. Instead of immediately reacting and grabbing it, you can practice pausing. On the first ring, you stop what you are doing and breathe in. On the second ring, you breathe out and smile, aware that someone is trying to connect with you. On the third ring, you may choose to answer, but you do so from a place of calm presence rather than frantic reactivity. You can use countless other events as your bells. A red traffic light is not a source of frustration. It is a gift of 30 seconds to stop. Feel your hands on the steering wheel. Notice your breath and relax your shoulders. The feeling of thirst is a bell of mindfulness. Before you drink, be aware of the thirst. Be aware of the glass in your hand, the coolness of the water. Drink with your full attention, feeling the water nourishing your body. Waiting for your computer to start or for a kettle to boil are no longer wasted moments. They are invitations to pause and simply be. When you walk from your car to your office or from the kitchen to the bedroom, you can practice walking meditation. Feel the soles of your feet making contact with the ground, step after step. Each step is a return to the here and now. By peppering your day with these micro-meditations, you transform mundane activities into a continuous, flowing practice. You are creating small islands of sanity in the stream of your busy life, and you will find yourself returning home to the present moment hundreds of times a day. The third essential support for our practice is community. In Buddhism, this is known as the Sangha. The Buddha taught that while the path is one of personal effort, it is incredibly difficult to walk it alone. We are deeply social beings, profoundly influenced by the people and the environment around us. If you are surrounded by people who value speed, distraction, and consumerism, it is very difficult to cultivate slowness, attention, and contentment. But if you connect with others who are also on this path, your practice will be nourished and sustained. There is a beautiful parable that illustrates this point. A single drop of water falling on a hot stone evaporates in an instant and disappears. But if that same drop of water can find its way to the ocean, it becomes one with the immensity of the ocean and will never evaporate. Our individual practice is like that single drop of water. Left alone, amidst the heat of modern life, our motivation can easily dry up. The Sangha, the community of practice, is the ocean. By joining with others, our small practice becomes part of something vast and enduring. This doesn't necessarily mean joining a monastery. It can be as simple as finding a local meditation group, starting a small group with like-minded friends, or even just connecting with the global community through books, talks, and online resources. Sharing your experiences, listening to others, and feeling that you are not alone on this journey is an immeasurable source of strength and inspiration. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we must cultivate the compassionate attitude of beginning again. You will have days when you forget to be mindful. You will have days when you skip your meditation. You will lose your temper. You will get swept away by worry. This is not a sign of failure. It is simply a sign that you are a human being. The practice is not about achieving a perfect, unbroken state of enlightened awareness. The true practice lies in the moment you realize you have been lost. The practice is in the gentle, kind, and non-judgmental act of starting over. The voice of the inner critic that berates you for forgetting is just another thought, another cloud passing in the sky of your awareness. True practice is to smile at that voice, and with the kindness you would show a small child learning to walk, you simply begin again. You return to your breath. You take one mindful step. You offer one kind word. This start again quality is the heart of a mature practice. It is boundless patience and endless compassion for yourself. It is the understanding that every moment is a new moment, a fresh opportunity to wake up. These 4 strategiesa, consistent formal practice, weaving mindfulness into daily life, finding a supportive community, and cultivating the kindness of beginning again form a complete and practical path. They are the tools that allow us to move from philosophical understanding to lived experience. They ensure that our journey toward peace is not a grim, solitary struggle, but a joyful, supported, and continuous process of waking up to the beauty and potential of every single moment. We have traveled far on this inner journey together. We began with the image of a mind besieged, caught in the relentless whirlwind of modern life. A mind convinced that peace was something to be found somewhere else, in some future circumstance, after some great achievement. We have explored the nature of this unease, identifying the fires of greed, aversion, and ignorance that fuel our suffering. We have equipped ourselves with the cooling water of mindfulness, the gentle balm of compassion, and the clear light of wisdom. We have learned practical ways to integrate these tools into our lives, turning our very existence into a path of practice. And now, we arrive at the final, most liberating realization, the one that turns the entire search on its head. We discover that the teacher we have been seeking, the peace we have been craving, and the refuge we have been longing for have been within us all along. At the very heart of the Buddha's teaching is a profoundly optimistic and empowering concept: Buddha, nature. This is the simple, radical truth that the capacity for complete awakening, for boundless compassion, and for penetrating wisdom is not something we need to acquire, import, or build. It is the innate, fundamental nature of our own mind. Think of the sky. On some days, it is filled with dark, turbulent storm clouds. These are our moments of anger, fear, and confusion. We can get so lost in the storm that we forget the sky itself, and we believe that we are the storm. But the sky, the vast, open, clear, and limitless expanse of awareness, is never harmed, stained, or diminished by the clouds that pass through it. The clouds are temporary. The sky is primordial. Buddha nature is that sky. It is your true nature. It may be obscured by the clouds of your conditioning, but it has never been absent, not even for a moment. The entire spiritual path is not a process of construction, of becoming someone better. It is a process of subtraction, of purification. It is the patient and compassionate work of allowing the clouds of greed, aversion, and ignorance to disperse, so that the brilliant, peaceful, and ever-present sky of our true nature can be revealed. If this is true, if this awakened potential is already our birthright, then what is the role of a teacher, like the Buddha, or any other guide on the path? This is a crucial point. A teacher is not a savior who can give you enlightenment. They are a guide who has already walked the path and can point out the way. Imagine you are lost in a dense forest, and someone from a high mountaintop can see the entire landscape. They can call down to you and say, "Don't go that way. There is a cliff. If you turn left here, you will find the stream." They can offer a map. They can share their experience. They can provide encouragement, but they cannot walk the path for you. You must take the steps yourself. The Buddha was once asked if he could wash away the sins or suffering of others. He replied that he could not. He could only show them the nature of suffering and the path to its cessation. The rest was up to them. This is why liberation comes not from blind faith in a doctrine or a person, but from your own direct experience, your own aha moment of insight. The teachings are a finger pointing at the moon of truth. We must not mistake the finger for the moon. We must look where the finger is pointing and see the moon with our own eyes. This understanding places the power and the responsibility for your liberation squarely in your own hands. It leads to the realization you are the master of your mind. For so long, we have lived as though we were slaves to our own inner states. A thought of anxiety arises, and we become anxious. A feeling of anger appears, and we become angry. A memory of sadness surfaces, and we become sad. We are thrown about by the habitual patterns of our own minds. The practice of mindfulness has shown us that there is another way. It has revealed a space, a sacred pause, between the stimulus of a thought or feeling and our response to it. In that space lies our freedom. In that space lies our power to choose. We cannot always control what thoughts or emotions will appear in our mind, just as we cannot control the weather. But we can choose not to be swept away by the storm. We can choose to anchor ourselves in the calm center of awareness and watch the storm pass. This is the ultimate sovereignty. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the spacious, silent awareness that witnesses them. You are the master of this inner kingdom. This entire message was encapsulated in the Buddha's final, poignant instructions to his disciples. As he lay on his deathbed, about to enter his final nirvana, his followers were weeping. His beloved disciple, Ananda, who had served him for decades, was distraught. "The teacher is leaving us," he cried. "The light of the world is about to be extinguished. Who will be our guide now?" The Buddha, with his last breaths, offered the most empowering teaching of his life. "Ananda," he said, "and all of you, be a lamp unto yourselves. Be a refuge unto yourselves. Do not seek for refuge outside of yourselves. Take refuge in the Dharma, the truth itself, and in your own practice of it. But do not rely on any external guide. What did he mean? He was saying that the lamp that will illuminate your path is your own mindfulness, your own capacity to be present and see clearly. The ultimate refuge, the only truly safe place from the storms of life, is not a person or a place, but your own awakened nature, your own inner sky. In his final moments, the Buddha was not pointing to himself. He was pointing back at each and every one of us. He was dissolving the student-teacher hierarchy and saying, "You have everything you need. The potential for full awakening that I realized is the same potential that exists within you. Now, it is up to you. Trust yourself. Trust the practice. Be your own light." And so, we discover that this great spiritual journey, which can often feel like a striving to reach a distant, exotic shore, is in fact a journey home. We are not trying to become a Buddha. We are simply trying to cease being everything that we are not. We are learning to let go of the anxieties, the false identities, the defensive armor, and the conditioned habits that we have mistaken for ourselves. We are returning to the simplicity, the clarity, and the innate peace of our original nature. It is a journey from the head to the heart. It is a journey from complication to simplicity. It is the journey of the prodigal son or daughter, finally returning to the home they never truly left. The peace you have been seeking in the world is the very essence of your own being, waiting patiently for you to turn your attention inward and recognize it. You are the one you have been waiting for. Our journey began with a simple, familiar image, a person named Alex, sitting in a modern world, surrounded by the emblems of success, yet feeling a profound sense of inner turmoil, a quiet suffocation, the buzzing phone, the endless to-do list, the feeling of running on a treadmill, going nowhere. We recognized in Alex a reflection of our own modern struggle, the quiet desperation of a life spent chasing shadows, a life of constant doing, with very little time for simply being. We started with the assumption that the problem was out there, in the world's demands and pressures. But as we walked this path together, our perspective began to shift. We turned our gaze inward and discovered that the true source of our dis-ease was not in our circumstances, but in our own minds. We met the three great fires that fuel all our suffering: the insatiable fire of craving, the reactive fire of aversion, and the smoldering fire of ignorance that convinces us we are separate and permanent in a world that is transient and interconnected. But we did not stop at the diagnosis. We discovered that there is a medicine, an ancient and powerful path to peace. We learned to anchor ourselves in the simple, life-giving miracle of the breath. We learned to watch our thoughts, not as tyrannical masters, but as passing clouds in the vast sky of our awareness. We discovered the profound wisdom of impermanence and no self, realizing that letting go is the key to freedom. We learned to cultivate the boundless heart, watering the seeds of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, transforming our relationship with ourselves and with all beings. And so we arrive here, at the end of this exploration, with a new understanding. The core message of this entire journey is this: peace is not a destination you arrive at when all your problems are solved. It is not a fragile state that depends on the world outside being quiet and orderly. Peace is an inner capacity. It is a quality of mind that can be cultivated, a refuge that you can build within yourself, brick by brick, with each mindful breath. It is the deep, unshakable calm that can hold both the joy and the sorrow of life, It is the spaciousness that can witness anger, fear, and grief without being consumed by them. Peace is the ultimate freedom, the freedom from being a slave to the habitual, reactive patterns of your own mind. Now, as we prepare to part ways, the final truth is offered back to you. You do not need to become a monk or a nun. You do not need to retreat from the world or abandon your responsibilities. You only need to begin right where you are. The entire path, the entire journey of liberation is contained within a single, conscious breath. That is your anchor. That is your refuge. That is your starting point to which you can return again and again. This ancient wisdom, which has flowed like a great river through millennia, is now yours. It is not a dogma to be believed, but a set of tools to be used. Use them to craft a life of greater presence, deeper connection, and more authentic joy. Experiment for yourself. Be your own guide. Be your own light. The profound peace that you may have been seeking your entire life, the feeling of finally coming home, has always been here. It has been waiting, patiently, in the quiet depths of your own heart, for you to return.